Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently it's 427 on 420, so I hope all of my gardeners are having a good day. I have been trying to watch One Piece. I'm putting myself through it. Originally I was going to do every 15 episodes I was going to update my feelings, but so far I've been watching 13 episodes as of today. And I was introduced to the character Usopp, and I was introduced to I don't remember the captain's name, but the butler that is currently having his plans not go accordingly. And so far, I'm trying to give it a fair shot, and I'm trying to be with it. I am watching in dub. I don't really care about the whole dub and sub argument. That's never ending. I don't care. But so far, I'm wanting to like it, but I'm just wanting it to earn my liking. And I know that this is about 1,000 episodes, and there's going to be a lot of character development. And supposedly, this is just what my understanding is, that all of this episodes is just a build-up for Luffy and understanding all of the characters' lore to the most insane degree possible. And then after learning all the lore and all that, then the actual situation of trying to find the One Piece will actually become more of a focus, is what I'm gonna get. That's what my guess is, because I think it's just gonna be a lot of character building and a lot of power-ups and different hierarchies and just a lot of lore, which I'm hoping that if I really do commit through and watch all of One Piece, which it is a task. Like, I've never been over encumbered or just feeling overwhelmed by a series, but this series is definitely something that I'm not entirely excited by. It's more so of like, I want to know what's the hype, because it's been talked about all through my life. There is not one single moment of my day where I have not heard the word One Piece. And I've just seen nothing but praise for it. So I'm gonna try and commit. I was really surprised that you actually see Shanks like 5 episodes in. I was really surprised to see him. I thought he was gonna be a character that you meet way down the line and then you see flashbacks, which I imagine anyways that's gonna happen. But so far, I'm just filling out the vibes and seeing how it goes. The 4:3 ratio is mildly annoying, but that's just a preference for me. And I want to like Nami, but I don't have a reason to like Nami. I want to like Zoro, but I don't have any other reason to like Zoro besides, 3 swords, he's cool. And I want to like Luffy, but I'm waiting for these characters to earn my liking, and I just don't want to like throw out my liking. So I have no idea how this is going to go. Again, I've only watched 13 episodes, and I probably still have 1,173 left to go, something like that. I don't know. I haven't really kept up to date. I'm not trying to overwhelm myself with the actual numbers. And there might be movies, so I don't know how I'm gonna get that situated, but no, I'm just currently trying to watch the series as is, and if I can watch the movies, I will watch the movies, but no promises. But so far, it's solid. I have no complaints at the moment. It's just it's a lot, so I'm a little nervous more so than anything else. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I've currently watched 41 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Before I start, I should preface of the animes that I have watched or have read the manga, and I will say it is recent. I didn't get into anime until about 2021. I have read Berserk, Death Note, Attack on Titan, JJK, Demon Slayer, Tokyo Ghoul, and I've also watched them. For the animes that I have watched but I have not read the manga as I want to be surprised is Vinland Saga, Chainsaw Man, and one that's not necessarily an anime but I consider it to be is Cyberpunk Edgerunners. And as for my watch list right now, it's only Hellsing Ultimate, Overlord, and Hunter x Hunter. I have made many attempts to try and watch Naruto and Dragon Ball, but they're just not things that I particularly like. And maybe if I do actually stick through with One Piece, which I should also say thank you to all the comments talking about how to go about the series. One comment that did amuse me was someone saying, hey, just get halfway and maybe you can drop off if you want. I'm like, that's 500 episodes still, so we'll see. I won't lie, I was not a huge fan of Luffy for like the first 25 episodes. And I should say that I was not really expecting this series to have a lot of announcements and incessant monologues. Which is interesting because my favorite movie is The Hateful Eight, which is like 2 hours and 20 minutes of people essentially talking, 5 minutes of gunfights. And I also have fallen in love with Mike Flanagan's work, which that man does a lot of monologues. And I don't know if it's just the fact that I'm trying to adjust to the tone of the show, but I had a negative view on One Piece because I thought it was relatively a childish show, and I didn't realize there's a little bit more of a tone to it, and that is my own negative bias because I have never really seen much of One Piece. I just saw it was very goofy and didn't really take itself too seriously, and for me, I like grit, I like realism, that not because I like to suffer, but that's just something that I can relate to. And Berserk is fantastical, and Tokyo Ghoul is also fantastical, and JJK is very fantastical, especially in the first season, but it takes itself seriously enough that you can also feel the weight. And I think that's kind of what I'm waiting for One Piece, because I've seen glimpses and moments where Luffy will get serious, and I'm like, ooh. But it's really jarring for me to like follow along this protagonist who's very goofy and enthusiastic about everything. But one trait that I do appreciate about Luffy, and where I started to like him when he's recruited Nami and now is trying to get Nami back, is his stubbornness. His stubborn persistence and just certainty in everything. I appreciate that a lot. However, for characters that I'm not a huge fan of, but it's mainly because like I am hoping that potentially after this Nami arc that maybe these characters will get better, and I'm referring mainly to Usopp and Sanji, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like Sanji, I don't really like Usopp, but I just came off of Demon Slayer, so Zenitsu is a character who I strongly dislike. I don't care about his cool moments. Zenitsu is a character I dislike, and Usopp has been giving me moments where he kind of reminds me of him at times. But I was deeply appreciative where it feels like Zenitsu had a way too long of a period to try and get himself to be composed and just take something seriously for once. And they flipped it with Usopp being able to like, he's cowardly, but he's cowardly brave at doing this, and he was able to actually have a huge confidence boost because he was able to defeat a fishman. What I'm curious is about the aspect of the characters of like how will they continue to grow, or what are they going to deal with, or what issues that they'll have to face that they'll have to overcome and just continue to growing as a better person or worse person. I don't know. Probably for the better, because I'll be honest, there are a lot of the villains in the story I do appreciate not having a lot of the backstory being told to me. And what I mean specifically is a lot of the issues that I have with Demon Slayer, it seems like everybody just kind of regrets being a demon and just is making a very sad situation. I had no choice, I had to turn into a demon, and I appreciate the fact that the pirates are just like, I just wanted to. And I'm sure that there's going to be backstories and things about that, and depending on how Oda does it, I will see. The man hasn't earned my full trust yet. I'm still just kind of watching from the sidelines, seeing how he does it. And the only other thing that I will say that is inherently negative, I do apologize, is I don't really like a lot of them villains that I've seen so far, like the Black Cat Kiro, I'm not a huge fan of. Don Krieg, I wasn't a huge fan of. But I guess this is probably maybe a common thing for everyone, but Arglon was definitely an interest for me. And that's more so because of his character design, and he just seems to be intensely evil for the sake of just being evil. But the thing that I do struggle with that seems to be consistent with everybody's crewmates or villagers is I don't really like the style of sense of humor. Again, I'm just getting really bad like Zenitsu flashbacks where he's just screaming in your ear for 10 minutes, sobbing for 5, and then screaming, and then sleeping, and then being cool for 2 minutes, and then doing that. But originally, the first 15 episodes, I will sadly say that was a 3 out of 10 of enjoyment. But it's been increasing, I would say so far. It's a 5 out of 10, but I'm just kind of waiting for when it starts to really earn me. But I do apologize for how long this is. I wasn't expecting to make it as long as I did. Anyways, 41 episodes. I shall continue. Hopefully we'll be done
maybe 3 months. Anywho, you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I'm 55 episodes deep into One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Now, the way that I've been trying to watch the series is I am a warehouse worker. I often do packaging, which allows me to just have my phone set aside, and I can just put on One Piece and mindfully watch it, skip the introduction, skip the recap, because I've been told and warned that there are spoilers when they do their recap or their introductions, so I'm just trying to skip that. But I'm grateful that I was able to get a few days away from One Piece because it allowed me to process everything that I've been watching. And maybe it's the fact that I'm consuming a lot, but it's growing on me. Begrudgingly so, it's growing on me. And a lot of my friends and family, and especially my wife, are not very supportive of this journey that I'm partaking by myself right now. In fact, a lot of them are just like, please, just don't do it, just stop. And I'm like, I know, but someone's gotta do it. None of you guys are gonna watch One Piece. I will partake this journey myself. I don't know how long it will take me, but I will get there. And it's kind of hard, but I get it. They want me to watch Supernatural because I would have a better time with that, and that's 327 episodes. And I'm like, yeah, it would probably be easier, but I've already started. And I will say, so far, as a more coherent thought, characters like Arlong has been something that I've been kind of hoping that I can see more of. I know Arlong is a traditional run-of-the-mill villain, not very interesting, besides the fact that he wants to rule the seas and he's just trying to map everything out. What hooked me about Arlong was his character design and just how he was represented. I really like Arlong. And I'm hoping that perhaps in later episodes I could see more anamorphic creatures, because I really like Arlong's design. It's something that I can't stop thinking about. But as a spoiler for those who not got to where I'm at, I'm now on the Warship Island arc so far, and I like dragons. Dragons have always been something that I'm super fixated about, and to think that this series is tackling dragons 55 episodes in, I'm like, wow, what else do you have to offer me? And the things that I do know and I'm aware of, but I don't know when is going to happen, is I know that there's gears, levels of gears for Luffy. And I'm curious to when that will happen. But my assumption, maybe it's going to be episode 100 where Luffy gets gear 1. And I don't really know what the hell these gears are. I'm figuring out these new fruits and figuring out what they do, and I'm a little overwhelmed. And so far, as for my negatives, my main negative is I don't really like Buggy the Clown at all. And I was really thrown off when I was watching an episode and Buggy was on screen. I'm like, am I missing something? What's going on? And to see him be reintroduced and him meeting Alvida, which I was surprised to see Alvida again. And I'm curious to how it's going to keep building upon itself, because if it's just going to rehash a lot of the same villains, I'm worried I'll lose interest because of that. But for characters that really surprised me and have honestly I've been growing to like a little bit more is someone like Usopp. Definitely. Usopp was a character that was a screeching nail for me, but after his first encounter with the fish man and now fighting Daddy Father or whatever that man's name was, Usopp has been becoming more of a character that I like a lot more. Sanji, he's not as annoying as I thought he would be. Zoro, I really like Zoro, and I relate to Zoro more than I would like. And Luffy is a really good character too. He's been growing on me a lot. And maybe it's because I'm consuming so much of One Piece right now, but begrudgingly, I've been enjoying it. I've kind of put my annoyances and biases aside, as in everything about the comedy aspect, it may not be for me, but what I am interested is the fights and just to see what other characters are going to be coming next. And so far, with a lot of the Marines, I find them to be kind of not really meaningful. I think Marines are just kind of a nuisance and just really annoying to deal with, but there's something. And I'm hoping that there's a certain Marine that can actually be as serious as they say they are, because a lot of the Marines so far, I haven't felt like they were a meaningful threat by any means. And it also seems that way with Luffy as well, because all of the Marines that talk high and mighty, they put up a little bit of a fight, but like at the end of the day, Luffy overcomes it. And one thing that's extremely overwhelming is the fact that there's multiple fruits, which I'm aware that there's multiple fruits because I see sometimes like character creator wheels on TikTok, and there's just these absolutely gigantic list of different fruits, and I have no idea what that entails. I hear things like the ornament, I hear things about like the hockey, and I don't know what any of that is, but I do look forward to understanding it. And my main concern right now is, when am I going to see Shanks again? Because I know he's going to be part of the crew, and my thinking is he's going to be someone similar to Zoro, and he's going to have like two right-hand men, and Zoro and Shanks is definitely going to be one of those characters. And I'm also curious to when I'll see this little furry guy. I think he might be a doctor. I could be wrong about that. But I know he's mostly hated by the community because he's really annoying, apparently. I'm very looking forward to meeting him, though. But it's been odd, but it's been good. And that's all I have to say, so hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I'm currently 85 episodes deep into One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. More so than anything, it's going to be about the animation and the quality of the show than the actual story, because I feel like I'm still getting through some chunks. I'm just meeting Chopper, and so far, I'm liking him. I'm understanding his backstory and everything that's happening, but I really want to talk about the animation, finally. And it's not to say that the animation is bad, it's serviceable and it works for the first 61 episodes, but I won't lie. The animation and the style of it was not the reason why I wanted to watch this series. If anything, the animation for the first 60 episodes was really rough, and I didn't realize that on Crunchyroll that they also have the HD version. I wish I knew that before I watched all 60 episodes. So I watched it as it was, and I'm not a huge fan of it. Mainly due to the fact of the body proportions, the aspect ratio, and just how some things tend to linger longer than it should be. And I understand that a lot of the time it's mainly to put emphasis on the situation at hand, so they'll linger onto the shot for probably 1.5 episodes if they really want. And I'm aware that sometimes it will probably be like that still, maybe a little bit better, but I know it's going to linger on some fights for like 10, 20 episodes. That's fine. I got used to the whole aspect of everyone's reaction being revealed, and they're still doing that one move for like 5 minutes, and I get it. But last night, I decided to watch just a couple more One Piece episodes. I had the blessing from my wife. She'll fall asleep and tune out to it, and it was the Whiskey Peak episode. Before I get into that, I really want to say that I'm just a huge film nerd, and I love movies, I love TV. I have roughly 2000s movie logged onto Letterboxd. And it's not to put me on a pedestal or anything, it's just to express where I'm coming from and what I see. The only relevant anime that I have watched recently in completion is JJK, so I will bring it up, but I know there are things that One Piece does that JJK doesn't. But I want to say that the first season of JJK, very pretty, but I don't really like Season 1's art style. And Season 2 felt like inconsistent because they were just kind of in the between state. And Season 3, you can say it's recency bias, but I disagree, and I want to say that I think Season 3 is the most beautiful format that JJK has taken. And I noticed on the Whiskey Peak episode with Zoro is a huge jump. Because a lot of the action, a lot of the times, is not something that I was really tuning in for One Piece. It was just something that was happening, and I was just partaking the journey with them. But I feel like maybe the character was upscaled, or they're actually trying to show, hey, this is how they are. And I really appreciate almost the upgrade in quality. It's not a major shift, but it definitely does seem like it's more focused. Like their facial animations seem to be more consistent. And the 4:3 ratio seems to be like widening. I don't know if I'm tweaking or not, but I feel like it's getting wider. And the thing that was really surprising, I'm going to glaze the hell out of Zoro, but that entire fight sequence, I was surprised. It was super smooth and it was crisp, and I was like, this is beautiful. And I'm not gonna lie, that Whiskey Peak episode with Zoro fighting all of those bounty hunters it got me. I get it. And I can only imagine how much more better it's going to get with later episodes having even more improved animation quality, with a bigger studio, with better lighting, better compositions. But I really appreciate the fact that I'm noticing the shading and how, like, it's just building. And I think my favorite thing so far as for watching this series is just seeing the improvements with the quality and just seeing the studio get more of a footing and just being more confident in what they're doing. However, I am a little worried for the sexualization of some character designs because I feel like it's probably going to get worse. I don't know if it's going to be like Chainsaw Man level of like sexualization, but I do notice some characters just having more physics than they should, and it does kind of rub me the wrong way, but I'm trying to not focus too much on it. But I want to say that so far, I really have been enjoying the hell out of the last 30 episodes that I've been watching. I thought the pacing was going to drag, but I'm really surprised with how snappy and quick everything's going through. And I definitely know that it's going to probably take a little bit of a drag, a little bit of slow down, because I haven't reached Alabasta yet, and they're currently trying to recruit Chopper, which I know they're going to do. And I kind of like Chopper. I don't have any annoyances with him so far. I think he's cute, and I'm very curious to what he's going to be able to bring to the whole crew. One thing that is a downside, because I just figured that it won't really happen, is I don't know if there's going to be any major character deaths at all, which is kind of disappointing because I have this idea that like all this crew and ensembles that they're getting together, I don't think any of them are actually going to die. So when there's something at stake, I don't really feel like they're really in danger. Candleman and the whole situation with them being wax statues for a moment, I didn't feel like, oh, I need to be worried about this. Especially with Nami getting infected with whatever it was, and I just don't feel any concern. I do feel the weight and the impact of the fact that like Luffy is climbing 3 miles up this rock in a blizzard. Props to him. But I don't feel any weight or impact with the characters because I don't feel like there's any risk with them. So a lot of the times I'm like, I know you're going to get out of this, and I know pretty much everyone's going to be okay. And the only thing that like I'm seeing is just like scars and fights and battles, which I did notice in the Dragon Island episode. I know that's not canon, but I noticed like after Luffy taking out Sicko Man and he got all cut up and everything, literally the next frame was him all healed up, and I was like, what happened? And I am worried about that, but I'm not going to be super nitpicky about the whole animation and consistent things because I watch Invincible. I understand like not having consistency, but it is something that I notice, and it's something that I feel like I should mention. But other than that, and I know I reiterate the same points over and over again, I just think that so far it's been such an improvement that I've been enjoying it. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I've currently watched 134 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. I can comfortably say that I think I'm getting through the majority of the Alabasta arc, and now we're just kind of like in the cleanup section. And I will say for my first major arc of the story, it was not my favorite, but there are some things that I should mention that I do like. Like a lot of the comedy I was not a huge fan of for like the first 60 episodes. It just was not my thing whatsoever. However, it felt like this comedy was given a little bit more breathing room, and I was able to just actually enjoy some of the jokes that they were able to tell. Luffy was actually the funniest one throughout this entire arc. And I will be honest, Princess Vivi, Karoo, Igaram, and Crocodile were not my favorite set of characters to join. I was honestly not a fan. And my reason being is just it felt so underwhelming, I guess. Like, I get the point of it, but maybe it's the fact that Igaram died and then Pell died. And yet there's no actual meaningful character deaths. And so far, my only theory that I have right now is I know Ace is going to come back, and Ace is definitely going to die. And my only reason for that is he's the older brother. He's the cool older brother. He's got to die. I can't think of a series where the older brother, who's kind of chill and has his own trauma that he has to go through, he's going to probably do something to redeem himself as a character, or just help Luffy push to another extent that the crew didn't expect. And I believe that Ace is going to die, and it's probably going to be really traumatizing for everybody involved.
But that means I gotta wait for like Blackbeard or Whitebeard to show up. I don't know how he's gonna die, but I know Lace is gonna die. So I'm hoping that with bigger crew, because I think they still gotta go find a musician and everything, and I think their crew is set. I could be wrong. But I was kind of surprised that Miss Sunday was able to join them, and I don't know how to feel about her. I think her and Zoro are gonna be like haters to lovers. I don't know if that's gonna be a thing, but I feel like Zoro and Miss Sunday are gonna definitely not like each other at the beginning, and then Zoro's gonna catch some feelings for her, maybe learn some things about her backstory, and just Miss Sunday. But one person that surprised me the most about this arc was actually Nami. And I will say that Sanji and Usopp, for some reason, really just were not my favorite things in this arc, especially number 2. Number 2 was just really pressing the wrong buttons for me. I think he was just really insistent on himself. I'm still processing everything that I watched, and I just don't know how to feel. And I'm hoping that, like, with this next couple of arcs that I'll probably go through, is I hope it becomes even more focused. Because, like, I get that the entire adventure of Alabasta was essentially just Luffy bringing back the princess because that was her wish. And none of that would have happened if it wasn't for that and Mr. Crocodile. But Mr. Crocodile, I really didn't like at all. Like, he was just kind of underwhelming. I appreciate the fact that he given Luffy a couple of licks that were seemingly going to be detrimental. And Luffy having this insane battle intellect of being able to overcome such a powerful foe is definitely something that I'm looking forward to. Because one thing that I keep seeing through and through again is, although Luffy is inherently dumb, and he's not like the most amazing main character yet, or will be, I gotta give it to him. I do really like watching Luffy fight now, because I can just see, like, he's a lot smarter than people give him. He might have the most outrageous and ridiculous plans, but the kid gets it done, and I can appreciate that. But I'm hoping that at some point it starts to be more serious. And I keep saying that, like, I don't need it to be nitty gritty and brutal and everyone's dying left and right. I don't need that. I just want impact to actually mean something. And right now, I get it. It's the power of friendship. It's the power of hope and never giving up your dreams and your ambition and pushing forward. And witnessing all these characters who think having dreams is so childish and naive. Having ambition other than money and proper titles is meaningless. And you see all those characters fall because they don't have the power that Luffy has. The power of friendship. Which, yes, it does help and definitely helps them get to where they are. But I'm curious to how long that's going to carry them. Because it can only carry them so far, and I'm curious to where it'll go. And the other thing that I'm also wondering about is the affiliation with the D. I can't remember if it was Miss Sunday or another pirate that brought it up, but they mentioned Luffy's middle name. And I'm curious to if there's going to be someone of family relations. And I'm just curious to, like, if it's Ace that's going to help out the situation and make things a little bit more focused, and they'll figure out things about their ancestors. And for Luffy, I'm not going to lie, I don't think he just has the Gum Gum fruit, not only because I know that there are other gears that he has, but I think the Gum Gum fruit is just more than what they're leading on with. Because right now, the Gum Gum fruit feels like, oh, it's just a minor fruit. It's just a tiny little fruit that Luffy took. But I feel like it's gonna be like one of those Ken Kaneki situations, or where it's a lot more than it leads on. And maybe it's because that's why he such has an indomitable will, is because of the fruit that he took, or because it's his spirit and the ancestors running through him. I don't know. There's a lot of questions, and more questions keep popping up the more that I think about it, and I need to go back inside and get this done, but I'm curious. Alabasta arc, I would say, is a solid 6 out of 10, and maybe these last couple of episodes that'll clean up might boost it, but I don't know. I'm very curious to see where everyone's gonna go, and they still need to find the musician, so I wonder where he is, or she is, or it is. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I've currently watched 177 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. I'm currently about 20 episodes away from finishing the Skypiea arc, and I will say, if you weren't interested in the Alabasta arc and that didn't hook you, I can see why Skypiea was definitely an arc for most people. I'm about to get to the episode where Zoro is going to be fighting the Ordeal of Iron, which I'm curious to what he's going to do and what kind of moves he's going to pull off, and just wonder how they'll deal with that. But I do appreciate the Skypiea arc is definitely more focused with its themes and story, because I feel like Alabasta, although good, it wasn't consistently talking about what it was trying to say. It felt like it was juggling a lot. And I am seeing some of that payoff with Nico Robin, which I do appreciate. A badass feminine archaeologist, I do appreciate that. She has been a very fun character. And I do appreciate that we're going to get a little bit more of a final message for her arc, since it started in Alabasta. But my main point is all the Chandelorians, the angels, and these god characters, although they have different things and different goals, it's still in the same overarching theme of colonization or God versus man. And although Ganfall is not my favorite, and a majority of the angel characters are not my favorite, Wiper, I don't really like Wiper. If anything, I just kind of want him to be out of the picture. Which brings me to say, I don't think Loki's dead at all. She's going to probably be critically injured, and she's going to heal, and then she'll be able to say goodbye to all the Blue Sea dwellers, and then maybe join the crew. Maybe. But I don't think she'll join the crew. I don't think that would fit for her at all, but that would be a curious thing to see if she was able to join. However, I feel like this arc is definitely more focused, and I would say that my biggest gripes, and I know it's part of the show and part of its charm, but I don't like that there's no major impact. Like, sure, Usopp, Nami, Sanji, and Chopper are all gonna get taken out, and Luffy might get taken out, but they're gonna get back up and they're gonna deal with it because there's still 900 episodes. But I think the way that this lore is being dropped is definitely a lot more cohesive than Alabasta or any of the episodes prior, because I felt like it wasn't really structured well. A lot of the times for the first majority of One Piece, it kind of felt like it was not really thought through. But I'm kind of eating my words now, as I'm seeing that a lot of the things that I'm having gripes with is definitely getting brought back up, and I wonder if that will continue. I apologize for not being able to speak coherently, but I'm just still processing everything that I've been watching. But it's nice to see that, like, even though there's moments where I'm like, oh, I really wish that I can understand what they meant about this, but it doesn't become a focus until it becomes more relevant, which I do appreciate. So far for this arc, Zoro has been my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of Usopp or Sanji or Chopper this arc. It's not been very fun for me. I am curious to when I will see the Marines again, because I've heard about Don Flamingo, and that sounds like a very interesting villain. I want to see Don Flamingo. But I also appreciate that it's being a little bit more consistent with some of its power scaling, which I don't really like talking about power scaling, but I do appreciate that someone like the Hyena with such giant pride and ego, thinking that he can take on Luffy so easily just for Luffy to do one punch, very similar to like Naoya and Maki's fight, which I wonder if that was a reference from One Piece. I probably is, but... And Inaru, I haven't talked much about him because I haven't really seen much about him, and I'm curious to what he's going to be able to bring, but I know Luffy's going to overcome it for two reasons. One, he's not going to die. And I also think that it's just a rubber effect that Luffy's going to be able to, like, just mostly easily overcome Zenaru and his whole lightning powers, which I think is very cool. But one thing about Inaru on this whole dub arc that I've been watching, he reminds me a lot of, like, Erwin from Attack on Titan. Like an evil Erwin that's just blessed with the devil fruit that has lightning powers, and he's just benevolent instead of compassion. And I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Inaru is going to be showcasing his power set and how Luffy is going to overcome that. I do look forward to. But I think I like this arc mainly more so because of the visual differences, because I get the whole desert aspect of Alabasta, but I've seen so much of the desert from the first 60 episodes that it feels a little bit more refreshing to have a little bit more vibrancy. And I will say again, as an improvement, I feel like the comedy is definitely getting better. It definitely feels like a lot of it's more purposeful and more of a harder punch. Because for like the first few episodes, I was not really a fan of the comedy. It was really just kind of lacking and felt like it was insistent and just trying to make me laugh. But right now, it feels like it's been more relaxed and it knows when it needs to land a punch and when it needs to take itself seriously, which I do appreciate. But I'm curious to what's going to happen next. So I guess I got to get back to it. But I apologize if I'm just reiterating myself and just glazing the show. There are still problems I have, but I feel like I can't conclusively tell you what my problems are with One Piece until I've consumed it. And I'm only 177 episodes in, so I still have a lot to go through. But my biggest concern right now is the power scaling, and you can get higher and higher, but you're already going through like godlike powers. So how do you exceed that? And I know that there's things like armaments and there's hockeys, which hasn't been introduced or mentioned yet. So maybe that will introduce another level, but I'm just curious to how the power system is going to be structured, because it feels like it's not coherent for me. Like a lot of this giant power systems that they're developing and showcasing to me, I'm having a hard time grasping just how strong it is when it seems like equal footing a lot of the time. And Luffy hasn't really had to like upgrade himself or really do much. He might learn new moves and might learn different things in the heat of the battle, but for the most part, he's been able to use basic abilities of his Gum Gum Fruit, and I'm curious to how he's going to evolve from that. Like, is it a near-death case scenario where he unlocks a certain new ability? Is it training that he has to do? Because I'm curious to how do you continuously grow your power and fine-tune your power if at this moment it just looks like it's advanced techniques with the basic maneuvers and movement control. Like, I'm just trying to get an understanding of how this power structure is working, and I'm finding it to be very frustrating so far. But I'm hoping that with this arc, and I'm gonna say maybe the next 1 or 2 arcs, that it'll become a little bit more understandable. But even then, I feel like it's not really gonna be as coherent, and I'm still gonna struggle with it, which I do not look forward to, but it's fine. But anywho, I appreciate you sticking around and listening to me rant. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and thank you for all the lovely comments from the community. It's been very appreciative, so bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 239 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Firstly, I want to say I apologize for not being able to update you on Monday or Tuesday. I just haven't had the time. I also just haven't been able to watch much of One Piece. I actually have been giving myself a little bit of a break because, on a little bit of a negative note, I was not a huge fan of Navarone all the way before the Water 7 arc. I'm not finished with Water 7. I'm actually still going through Water 7. But I will say, Navarone was really disappointing. And the reason why that I say that, and I don't mean to be so negative, I do apologize if I reiterate myself a lot, but Navarone, I thought it was going to be similar to like the Whiskey Peak situation, where they're going to showcase the intelligence of their adversaries, but a lot of it just felt like a nothing adventure. The entire thing of Navarone was the fact that Luffy needs to find his gold, and it was just the Marines' excuse to have a unification to finally feel like they're actually useful. And sure, it does show some different lights and perspective when they were undercover, being like, hey, this is what we do, and some of the cooks were absolutely astounded that a pirate made this. But for me, Navarone was just really disappointing, and it was only 5 or 6 episodes, so I was kind of just underwhelmed. But I didn't really get annoyed until the Long Ring Long Island arc started, and I was really interested in it until the Foxy Pirates. Now, the Foxy Pirates is definitively the worst crew that I have seen in One Piece so far. I do not like them whatsoever. And that's extremely harsh, I know, but I just was not a huge fan. And the commentator, when they were doing their Davy fight games, I was really annoyed with the commentator the entire time. Maybe I was just in a bad mood and just not vibing with the situation, but the Foxy Pirates were just a nuisance, and I was just waiting for it to be over. And then once we got to the Dream Island sequence, I finished that, and I was like, I need a break from One Piece. So Monday and Tuesday, I just kind of took a break because I know that a lot of TV shows and animes need to go through maybe the one arc of like, oh, somebody lost their memory. And although the Seahorse is not really a villain, if anything, he's just a nuisance that was just kind of in the way, a little fly that's just always persistent. But my biggest annoyance with that Dream Island sequence was the fact that Luffy and Zoro fought, but nothing ever came from it. And I know that Zoro was under the influence and he didn't exactly have control of himself, but when he sliced Luffy and given him the iconic X, I was like, ooh, is that it? Is that it? But to be very disappointed by the fact that it was healed and they never mentioned it. I mean, they briefly mentioned it, being like, oh, yeah, I was stuck under a boulder, but it's okay. I was kind of expecting that Zoro would apologize to Luffy or something because he's a very honest and loyal man, and he would never do anything that isn't for the captain. And to be the second-hand man, to be under the influence and just fighting your captain, I imagine like they would have had a conversation, but nothing came from it. I was kind of expecting Zoro to be like, Luffy, I'm sorry. And Luffy just brushing it off, being like, it was a good fight, but you know, it's okay. But nothing came from it, and I was like, oh, well, all right. But I will say, although I wasn't happy, I do appreciate that they showed one of the admirals, which I was not expecting. And I appreciate that, although I'm struggling with the power consistency in the show, they do give you like a little footnote of like what to expect, because there's like levels to this shit. And I really am excited to see the Admiral again, especially with his ice powers. I am very curious, but that leads me to wanting to see more of them. So I'm like, all right, I'll keep pushing. So now I'm in the Water 7 arc, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about Luffy and Usopp. I think Sanji and Usopp has definitely improved in the Water 7 arc. They have not been nearly as annoying as they were before, but I want to say, Usopp in this arc so far has been my favorite. The fact that, like, even though he knows he can never beat Luffy, he still went out of his way to do a duel. And although he always keeps telling himself and always telling everybody else that he's just weak and he's nothing compared to these people with these monstrous strengths, yet he's able to, like, trip up Luffy. Sure, maybe Luffy allowed it and maybe some of it just happened because convenience, but I don't want to discredit Usopp by any means. I was incredibly impressed the fact that Usopp was able to do anything to Luffy. And I really appreciate that, like, although I know Usopp is gonna come back because I did get spoiled that he's in Elbaf and they're all together. So I know that he's gonna come back. So I imagine what will happen is, like, they'll figure something out with the whole iceberg situation and the assassination about that. They're gonna get the situation with Frankie finally fixed, and Frankie will probably upgrade the Mary. But I also don't know what's gonna happen to the Mary, because I don't know if it's this arc that she's gonna bye-bye. I just know that the Mary's gonna be going. I just don't know when. I have comments on my videos that like, I never cried over a shit before, but this show made me do it, and I was like, is it this arc? But I am very curious, and I will say that seeing Frankie, I was not expecting a cyborg, so I'm surprised. And again, I know it's weird to express, like, expectations for a show, but it's kind of hard for me to express what that I expect. And a lot of it's kind of hard for me to express what it is, but I know there's a lot of fantastical elements, but for me, I always thought it was going to be to the extent of, like, anamorphic creatures, slightly weird islands with slight variations or different variations, like the long necks and the long trees. There might be a tiny island. There might be, I don't know. I wasn't expecting cyborgs. And I'm just like, okay, so if Oda is willing to do like cyborgs and he's gonna do like anamorphic creatures and dragons, I'm guessing anything is a possibility with the series. So just keep pushing forward because other arcs are gonna bring something else to the table. And the thing that I really appreciate so far is, although at the beginning Luffy was a character that I struggled to like really connect with, the only thing that was able to get me to like him to some degree is the fact that he's persistently stubborn and optimistic to such a extent that now that he's dealing with the complexities of like his crew having misunderstanding, disagreements, and they're fighting, which I appreciate that they're actually going to the lengths of like, people leaving the crew. I know a majority of them, if not everyone's still going to come back, but I appreciate that they're still making it a very serious thing. For a brief moment, I was like, damn, Usopp is just gone, but then I remembered, oh, he's going to come back. Still, I was very, very pleasantly surprised that Luffy was even like, hey, regardless, since I won, you still get to take the Mary, and I'm going to go elsewhere. Which I know he already made up his mind, the fact that he was going to not take the Mary and get a different ship. But just to show that much generosity towards Usopp, I really like Luffy. But now, Luffy and Nami are on the run and they're trying to escape because everyone is very pissed and doesn't want to listen to them right now. So, again, I just don't know what to expect. I don't want to put something there and then just get disappointed that it doesn't happen. So I'm just kind of backseating and just waiting to see what they bring. But I've thoroughly have been enjoying Water 7 a lot more than I have from Navarone to the Dream Sequence. But again, I do apologize. I appreciate you listening to me do a long tangent, and I guess I'll get back to it. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I'm currently 262 episodes into One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Now, firstly, before I even continue making this video, I had 3 of my wisdom teeth removed, and I'm still in recovery. I have not finished or watched much of One Piece since Friday. So all of my thoughts are based on what I felt before I went and got my surgery done. And I'm not gonna lie, I like Water 7, but I don't like it more than Skypiea or Alabasta so far. Although I do like Rob Lucci, and he kind of reminds me of Slash from Guns N' Roses. I mean, if you look at him really closely, just remove this part of the beard, looks exactly alike. Beautiful work. But I really didn't like the beginning introduction of Water 7 with the whole fact of like, oh, we lost the money, grab the money. Lost the money, grab the money. It started to become a little bit more interesting when the whole iceberg assassination, Nico Robin being a little weird. And I appreciated it being a little bit more different, but it just kind of started like slowing down a little bit. And I don't know if it's the fact like the introduction of CP9, which by the way, I wasn't at all surprised that they were the villains. Maybe Mr. Ropeman not being a villain was like the only surprise, but makes sense. His powers are kind of boring. But I was only able to guess who they were because of process of elimination. And although that was rewarding, I suppose, Nico Robin has been like incredibly frustrating in this arc, and I don't know why, because I feel like I see every single reason to why Nico Robin is acting the way she is, and yet she is still kind of annoying me right now. But I'm not gonna speak much on her because I feel like this next episode is like the final episode for Water 7, so I think it's just not gonna conclude much of anything, and it's gonna go into like the next arc, which I think is Ennie's Lobby. But I won't lie. Water 7 has been kind of disappointing with how much hype it was for what I've been told. And to just witness it, I'm like, I don't know, man. So far, Alabasta, Skypiea have been numbers ahead of Water 7 right now. However, Water 7 does add something more interesting than what I think Alabasta or Skypiea does, which is to go more in depth about the whole organizations and different factors that they do. And I will say, Frankie is so far my favorite. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like everything that Usopp is, not like the whole cowardly aspect of Usopp and all the angry and just extreme determination about Zoro. It's kind of like those two had a baby, and that's what Frankie is. And I really do like Frankie, and I really like his whole cyborg design. It's been very enjoyable. And as for what I think is going to happen for Frankie, I already saw his backstory, so I know for sure he's probably going to join the Straw Hats. But I haven't seen the Mary get destroyed yet, and knowing Oda and One Piece and everything like that, I feel like they're actually going to have an episode dedicated to it. So I think Frankie's going to join the crew, patch up the Mary just well enough to get them going a little bit forward. But eventually, they're going to have to get rid of the Mary, and I think Frankie's going to make a brand new ship. Because, well, one, they're going to have a bigger crew, and two,
that's just kind of like Frankie's ordeal. Like there was that little backstory where he made like a bunch of battle Frankies, and there was like 16 of them. And it would be a waste if he did not make a brand new ship for Luffy and the crew. I don't know what he's gonna add for the design though. I can't wait. But so far, I really don't know how to feel about Water 7. It's just kind of been. Oh. And as for characters that really annoyed me this arc so far, the only one is Nico Robin, and I just don't understand why she is being so difficult right now. Like, I get you have a lot of trauma, you've been on the run since you were 8 years old, and there's a lot of situation, and you have trust issues and everything big about that. But you are still acting quite annoying so far, so I've not been a huge fan of Nico right now, which is unfortunate. I hope she gets it together. But other than that, like, nobody's been really, like, actively annoying, besides, like, Nico just struggling to get it together. But I'm curious to what they're gonna do, because they still need to, like, Luffy needs to still fight Lucci, which I almost messed that up. I really like the whole devil fruit powers that Lucci has. I really like the fact that he's a leopard. Wasn't expecting that. Very cool design. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm hoping that when we get to Annie's lobby, I hope I can see some more familiar faces, because right now I do appreciate Water 7 and everything that it's trying to do, but like I just want to see some more familiar faces. So I'm hoping to see someone like Smoker again. Haven't seen Smoker in a minute. Kinda miss him. Not gonna lie. And there's still Colby. I don't know where Colby is, but the last thing I remember, he was like training with Axehand's son, and they were gonna become like one of the best like Marines in the Force. So I don't know where Colby is, but I hope I get to see Colby. I hope I get to see Smoker. Don Flamingo, I doubt he'll show up this arc, but if he does, I hope it goes well. I don't know, there's just a lot of uncertainty, but hey, I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 326 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. This will be spoilers for Water 7, Enies Lobby, and the Goodbye Going Merry arc, so if you've not seen either of those, bye-bye. I really appreciate that Water 7's introduction arc was essentially just building everything up until about the last 5 to 10 episodes, where it starts to really ramp up. And Enies Lobby, which I understand why a lot of people like it now, is just because it's non-stop, keeps it moving, keeps it going from one point to another, and it keeps it consistently going for the most part until the end of the arc. And I will say, for the most part, again, it's a 7 out of 10. The reason why I rated a 7 out of 10 for the entire Water 7 situation is it almost got me. But it mainly faltered because I believe it was the studio's fault, and I will explain shortly. I primarily have been watching One Piece on Netflix using the 1.25 speed, which may not seem like a huge distinction, but it just helps speed up the dialect to make it sound normal. Because as a very nitpicky complaint about One Piece, I don't like a lot of the way they do dialogue or cadences, because it sounds like they need to put emphasis on every single syllable and everything sounds dragged out. And the 1.25 speed just speeds it up a little bit to where it sounds like normal dialect, and it doesn't completely butcher the pacing. But anyways, I want to continue by saying it was really nice to be able to see Kobe again, because I hadn't seen him for a while. And it's a really interesting twist that Mr. Garb is Luffy's grandpa. I wasn't expecting that. I suppose it does make sense, but for me, I was just kind of like, excuse me, what are you on about? But Luffy's grandpa is not something that I really want to talk about, as I feel like there's other things that I really want to focus on. My biggest issue was the fact that I was about to get emotionally invested, and I was about to literally make that cornball statement of saying, I understand the One Piece. But as soon as Chopper took his third little rumble ball and he turned into this absolute behemoth of a fucking beast, and he's absolutely towering everybody, I was super excited to see what was going to happen. I was getting invested, and I go to press continue, and it's something else entirely. In fact, I was hit with the most intense emotional and tonal whiplash I've ever experienced. Because it turns out, and I don't know why I was not expecting this, but it turns out
they would like to put filler episodes in the middle of more important arcs, which I have not noticed any like non-canon or filler episodes while watching, unless I've like mentioned it and someone's like, yeah, no, that's just filler, and I'm like, oh. But to see that it randomly just comes in and says it's hellos, I got really annoyed because I felt like I was about to get emotionally really hooked into One Piece, and I was really wanting to see what was going to happen next for it to just take me to an alternate timeline / dimension of Luffy and everybody. So long story short, I put all the non-canon filler episodes that I found out into my little notepad, so if I catch up to One Piece and I want to watch more, I can just go back to the non-canon episodes and watch those. But I'm not gonna lie, I was already kind of pissed off because early on, Luffy and his entire crew were about to announce their declaration of war against the government, which that was very cool. And I understand that in the early 2000s, as this was airing, they need to remind the viewers, hey, just so you know that this is where Luffy was beginning, and now the man is starting to declare war on the government. Because what I'm trying to mention is the fact that there's like, from episode 279 to like 284, it's literally just a rehash of everything you've gone through. And it wouldn't be an issue if I was watching it as it aired, but as a modern viewer, I'm kind of annoyed about it. Now, I did skim through the episodes. I won't say that I entirely skip it, but I did skim through the episodes just to make sure that I'm not missing anything important. Which I get, but I was not really expecting them to kind of do a huge flashback sequence, and it kind of dipped the pacing just a little bit. Just kind of irked me the wrong way, because it was not what I was expecting. I didn't really get that from Alabasta. Sure, Alabasta was not amazing, but it kept its pace going. Although it might be dragging, it still kept it going. And Skypiea, it really wasn't an issue at all. I think Skypiea was a really well done arc, and Water 7 and Enies Lobby, the pacing's just odd. But I really like the fact that although there's a lot of things that do tend to still annoy me about One Piece, and I know it's something that I reiterate and bring up time and time again, it's just the fact that, like, for me, One Piece, like, the things that it doesn't work well with is the incessant monologues. And the fact that, like, there's a lot of things that I just don't like about it. But I do appreciate the fact the show is still willing to go into darker themes. Because although I wish it would take things more seriously, or it would have more of an impact on a lot of situations, because although I love this crew, I don't love this crew. I find them to be very endearing, very amusing, but I have no attachment to them. Because for me, there's like no emotional stakes for the situation for them at all. If anything, it's just me wanting to watch these characters power up and get to such an insane level that from where they were, it looks like nothing. But that's just because personally for me, I find death to be a very helpful and interesting tool for story writing, and I don't like the fact that One Piece doesn't utilize that. And I do appreciate the fact that it still like handles the themes of like colonization, genocide, and the wrongs and rights of evil, and how essentially Marines are just the pirates, but one code away. Literally, it's just like, hey, my ego, my pride, my treasure, my ego, my pride, my code. My ego, my pride, my title. It's pretty much the entire same thing, but they're all somewhat slightly different from the other. These villains are not really different, they're just different aspects of what could be the potentially worse. It's like a negative reflection of what each character is going through. And I'm starting to notice like a lot of these arcs are just rehashes or extreme extensions of traits of what we're familiar with, but more like, okay, what if Zoro had Sanji's personality? What if Nami had Usopp's personality? I appreciate that it goes to a bit more depth than I was expecting, but I was really just kind of struggling with Enies Lobby just a little bit, mainly because of the Shamblam, whatever his name is. And it's because of the fact that like every single time that we cut back to him and Robin, it would always be in the same loop of him berating Robin, talking smack to Robin, capture Robin, and then continue doing that for like 5 or 10 minutes while taking maybe 5 steps. I understand what they're trying to do for him. It didn't work for me. But what I'm trying to say is like, even though I don't appreciate how they introduced him and how they had him characterized, I do appreciate that they're now allowing a lot of the characters to be more separated. So then it felt like every time we were jumping back and forth between
important story beats. I didn't feel completely lost. In fact, it felt like every time there's a moment like Sanji's situation was kind of getting a little repetitive and annoying, it goes exactly over to Zoro. And if you get a little annoyed with Zoro, for some reason, it goes over to Luffy and Lucci. And also for Luffy, I'm not gonna lie, I'm completely bewildered by the fact that he has second gear and third gear. I have no idea where the first gear was. Because the entire time that I've seen Luffy is he's just absolutely a buffoon, he's funny, he's annoying people. I've never seen him do training, so seeing him do second gear and third gear absolutely bewilders me. But the last thing I will say is I really do appreciate that Blackbeard is becoming a little bit more of a focus point. It's almost like watching a reverse Luffy grow, and I'm really hoping, since he has this ridiculous power, that he does stay consistent, because if it's him, Shanks, that's 3 pirates that are going after the One Piece. That sounds fun. I just really like the depiction of what they're doing for Blackbeard, and I'm really interested in what they're gonna do for him. And the last thing that's got me a little confused is, anybody who has a weak will cannot stand a Shanks. I don't know what any of that means, but it's getting more intense. It seems to be more focused, and I have no idea where it's gonna go. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 415 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. This will mostly be about Thriller Bark and nothing that I'm consuming about Boa Hancock's. That will be a later update. But I should note that I've always been a huge fan of horror. I've always loved Scooby-Doo and Courage the Cowardly Dog. Those are the things that I grew up on. And Thriller Bark reminded me a lot of that. One big thing about One Piece that helped me get through a lot of the slower arcs or things that I don't really like is I want to see the animation improvement. That's been my goal, is just to see everything from the 90s all the way to the modern era, just to see how much they improve and what they are able to do. And forgive me, but Thriller Bark is eye candy, and no pun intended about it. I was really impressed with the colors and the visual standout that Thriller Bark is. Although it's not my favorite arc, I will give you a rating. It is an 8 out of 10. The first One Piece arc that I would say reached the number 8. And I was introduced to Brook, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little iffy on him. And it's mainly because I don't really love Sanji when he's absolutely obsessed with women. Like, when I see Sanji about to fight a woman, I'm not looking forward to it. And it's not even the code of chivalry that he follows. It's just the fact that he reminds me so much of Zenitsu from Demon Slayer, and that has a bad taste in my mouth. So when I got introduced to Brooks, I was super excited, and hearing him sing, I was like, man, this dude has an angelic voice. And the first thing that comes out of his mouth to Nami was, "What are the color of your panties?" And instantly I was just like, I really hope that you're not like a duo with Sanji, because that will be really annoying. But he seems to be more of a duo with like Chopper, Usopp, Frankie, a little bit of Sanji. But I really like the fact that Thriller Bark answered one of my big questions, is like, hey, can I just see Luffy be serious for more than a moment? And I did get that. To which then it results a very quick battle. Like, I was very surprised how quick that big boss fight with Moria was, because I thought it would last longer. Understandably, Luffy has like 100 shadows in him, so he's got all these personalities trying to fight for the one body, but it was just really interesting to see Luffy be so serious and efficient with what he does. And I'm curious to when Luffy will eventually find out about Zoro, if he ever does, about the whole thing of Zoro taking all of Luffy's pain for him. Which, speaking of the vice captain, which I don't know if I mentioned, but I look Zoro as kind of like the vice captain for everybody. So when I got introduced to the vice captain of the Gold D. Rogers crew, I am very happy I'm getting a lot more, I guess, questions about hockey. And the Celestial Dragons and all that is interesting. I was wondering if there was more to it, and I'm actually glad that one of my biggest gripes early on about One Piece is I feel like the Marines have not really been scary at all. Like, when the Marines come into play, I'm just kind of like, all right, let's get through these guys and let's move on. But to be pleasantly surprised by the fact that like some of the Marines that I've been seeing have been absolutely baller, and they have insane power. But I should also note that I got my first mention of Kaido, and I know he's relevant and very important. I think there's a battle with him and Luffy, and
I'm very surprised to hear that he's mentioned right now, because I don't think I'm going to see Kaido for like another 200 episodes or something, because if I recall correctly, I think there's like a big boss fight, and that's the Gear 5 Luffy, is when he's fighting Kaido. Either the first time, second time, I don't know. But I know Kaido was mentioned, and I was like, ooh. But then it quickly distracted me with everything about Goldie Roger's actual capture, turning out that he actually turned himself in and allowing this crew to just kind of disband over time. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hope that that's how One Piece ends. In a way, I really like the fact that, like, if Goldie Roger's spirit really does resemble through Luffy, because Luffy keeps doing these second gears and third gears, I haven't forgot about the fact that these are detrimental to the human body. And yes, he is made of rubber, but it's still detrimental to his health. And I feel like Luffy is not gonna make it. Like, he will make it through the journey, but he's not gonna live a long life. And in a lot of ways, I think he's gonna find the One Piece or just do something that outstands Goldie Roger. But I have a feeling that the way the story's gonna go is everyone's gonna get disbanded, and everyone's gonna remark about how remarkable the Straw Hats as pirates were, considering them to be the pinnacle of pirates, and that was the era that everyone was looking forward to. Or he unlocked something, I don't know, but I'm getting a little bit more. I just figured out that Luffy has the Conqueror's Haki, which 1 in 5 million people have, and I have no idea what any of that means or how strong it is. But it's nice to see that, like, I almost actually got really emotional about the entire crew on this bubble island, and they all just kind of disappeared one by one, and I knew that they're gonna appear again. I know that they're gonna be fine and everything's gonna be okay. Just right now, they need to be separated. And I really like the fact that this was like a true show of despair and desperation. And it kind of reminded me a lot of like Eren Yeager or Ken Kaneki or any main protagonist that feels like they fail, and seeing him have a mental breakdown and complete crash out. Like, I didn't recognize Luffy because I'm used to him being so positive and so happy. And to see him being so emotional, honestly, I was suppressing my own emotions so I don't cry to One Piece, because I can't really confidently be like, honey, One Piece made me cry. But it's gotten to me that at that point, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm very stoked to see what's next, and I'm very happy that, like, it's kind of taking its time, but I feel like it just keeps answering and giving me thousands and thousands of more questions, because we're halfway through the Grand Line, apparently, so they just gotta go from, like, the other direction, which I don't know how all that's gonna work out. It's all kind of confusing, but it's been insane to watch, and I've thoroughly been enjoying myself. As for Boa Hancock and the female island, it's not my favorite. I'm not enjoying myself this arc. I want it to be over. But I know there's some important lore things that are more relevant, so I'm just kind of pushing forward to get through, and it's not been bad. But I appreciate your patience on waiting for this update. I've just been having a lot going on in my life. So until I can get through another huge chunk, I will see you then. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 522 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Spoilers for Impel Down, Marineford, and a little bit of the time skip. And the reason that I haven't updated you is I've just been moving into my new apartment, so things have been very hectic. First thing I want to say, Magellan, as in the warden with the whole venomous diarrhea gag, I didn't really like the side gag at all. It was kind of disgusting. But on to more important matters, number 2, when I first was introduced to him with the Straw Hats, I was kind of overwhelmed by his personality. I was still adjusting to the dynamics of the entire Straw Hat crew, so seeing number 2 associate with them for a minute was just not for me, and I really didn't like number 2. And my feelings are still the same. I don't like him any less or any more, but I do appreciate what number 2 did, and that's about it. I don't know what it is about number 2, but I seen Luffy now without the Straw Hat Pirates, and I thought maybe that was the issue, but no, I just don't like number 2. Which is weird, because a character like Eva, I absolutely adored Eva in the last 2.5 arcs that I've watched. Eva reminds me a lot of Tim Curry's character from the Rocky Horror Show, especially the character design. Absolutely love it.
So I'm okay with Eva, but for some reason, number 2 just does not hit the mark for me at all. But Luffy being separated from his entire crew, I do actually really appreciate that, giving me a little bit of a break. Because I won't lie, I just kind of miss seeing Luffy as is, and I feel like the Marineford arc and the Impel Down arc giving me a lot more time with Luffy. However, I will mention about his brother Ace. I am also an older brother, I have 2 younger siblings, and I thought I would really like Ace, or really hit the mark with Ace. But there's a couple of things. I really like his character designs, I really like his powers, but by the time he died, I didn't care. Like, by the time Ace died, I was just kind of like, okay, can we, like, move past this? Which is extremely harsh, but, like, I have no incentive or reason to care for Ace at all. I was even a little bit more bitter about the fact that, like, after Ace had died, I then got a flashback of Ace, Sobu, and Luffy when they were little kids, and I appreciate that flashback arc and giving me information about the Mountain Bandits and Don Don. However, I feel like it just did not work for me. And the biggest thing about Marineford that I would say is the pacing really killed it for me. Like, don't get me wrong, Marineford feels like 2 giant middle fingers from Oda for, like, if you have no faith and you have questions about the way that the story's heading or where it's going. Oda puts you in your place for a second, being like, no, so you guys know, you have to fear the Marines, and a lot of it feels valid. But I'm not gonna lie, Marineford was probably the draggiest that I've ever felt. And there's a lot of moments in that arc that I felt like was just dragging its feet, and I was just getting annoyed. And I understand, like, the necessary steps to create a hero journey, especially that is fulfilling and worthy. But every setback that Luffy had the entire time through Marineford, I understood how detrimental and how desperate he is. I also understand how determined and stubborn Luffy is, and being able to see him use a little bit of his hockey/conqueror spirit. But when it comes to sacrificing the story's pacing because you want to drag things out a little bit before you do the heavy hitting, I just can't help but feel like that's not fair to me. And Whitebeard's death was not expected, but I'm not gonna lie, Whitebeard is cool, but I don't think he's that cool. And I understand that the man is not in his prime state, and he was still able to do a lot of damage and do a lot of things for Luffy and Ace. But Whitebeard as a character just kind of felt flat to me. And I'm hoping that later on that I will get more information, so like if I ever decide to rewatch all of these episodes, that Whitebeard's perspective of everything just hits better. Because for me, the biggest issues that I have is sometimes the inconsistency of when they'll do retrospectives or flashbacks. And I don't need it consistently because I understand you need to mix the story up and pacing a little bit. But for me, Whitebeard and his whole shenanigans, I was like, this is really cool to watch, but I don't care. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Marineford is a bad arc or a terrible arc. I just think it is a very strong arc with a really strong setback, and that is the pacing. I just think with everything in regards to Marineford and the post-war situation, I felt like a lot of it could have been placed differently or structured differently. I know I'm saying the same things, but I was expecting it to be a bit more coherent, and although I appreciate what it did and what it showcased, I still don't love it. I would say Marineford is like a 6 out of 10, to be completely honest. And the last thing that I will say and know is everything about the post-time skip. I've watched a little bit and I got to see the fake Straw Hats and everybody's new character designs, and I'm not a huge fan of what they've done to a lot of them. Buggy is a great example of, like, I love his character design, and I hope that in the post-time skip he looks even better because I love his long blue hair. It works wonderful. I also love the fact that Buggy is jesting his way to the top of the ranks to maybe look for the One Piece. I love that. It's very simple and straightforward. I appreciate that. Sanji's design with his little goatee, it's not bad. Pretty solid. I really like Zoro's design, but I wish he still had his tan. I like Nico Robin's design, but I still wish she had her tan. I like Nami's design. I like Usopp's design a lot. I
am a bit iffy on Luffy's design. I don't like how round everything is. It's very nitpicky, I know. And I also just kind of miss Luffy's rasp. For some reason, it just doesn't sound as raspy as he was for the first, 400 episodes. So it does make me a little bit sad that his character design's a little switched up. But I'm confused where he got the X. I feel like I missed something and I need to go back. Because I'm not going to lie, seeing the X on his chest, I was absolutely bamboozled because I did not see that happen. I don't know how Luffy got that scar, and I'm confused if I missed something, and I feel like I need to go back and rewatch some episodes just to see where he got that beautiful X. And I apologize that this is a very negative connotation of the Marineford / Impel Down. However, I will say that I do appreciate Impel Down, and I really like the entire 6 levels, 6.5. And them going into depth and showcasing a lot of the pirates. I was really happy to see Crocodile again. Crocodile was a very fun villain, so seeing him again was wonderful. I am a little annoyed Boa Hancock is kind of just love-stricken for Luffy, and I understand that she's a very strong and powerful ally. I just wish she wasn't reduced to that. And I really don't like Frankie's design. I don't know what Oda was thinking about changing up his look so drastically, but I really don't like that whole design. I do appreciate Riley being able to describe Luffy what the 3 Hakis are, though, and getting a bit more of an idea of what it is. I do appreciate that a lot, so thank you, Riley. You are the best. The last thing I want to note is I was really surprised to see Shanks show up at the end, to do a cleanup for the war of everything that happened, because I thought he would be such an important character. And maybe he'll become even more important since now we're in the post-time skip. But, I thought for the first 500 episodes that I'm going to see more of Shanks and seeing the importance of Shanks. But that man is filled to the brim with mystery, and I'm a little annoyed that I don't get to see much of him, but I always hear so much about him. And they were super close to meeting with Luffy, but something had to happen, so now it's kind of postponed. But I'm looking forward to seeing Luffy and Shanks reunite and hopefully, make some remarks to each other about how much stronger they are, or I don't know. But now we're on to the Fishman Island arc, and I met Jinbei, and I'm very curious to how that's going to go. But I really appreciate seeing Jinbei again. I also just appreciate seeing more fishmen. So I'm really looking forward to Fishman Island, although I've heard nothing good. I'm surprised to hear not a lot of people really love Fishman Island. It's always that, Syrup Village, and Long Ring Long Island are always remarked as one of the worst. Which I don't know how true that is. I'm still partaking it myself. But so far, it's been good. It's been good. There's just a lot of things that I'm kind of wishing things are done differently, but I'm still having a really good time with the series. But anywho, you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've finished 560 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Marineford is a good arc. It just kind of had a bit of a pacing issues for myself, and other than that, I really like it. It's pretty solid, but it's not my favorite. And I'm really close to finishing the Fishman Island arc, and I'm not gonna lie, this so far has been my favorite arc. But the thing that I never even mentioned or addressed in my last update, and I should now, is I'm really surprised that Blackbeard has the capability to steal other Devil Fruit powers. It makes sense that he's able to nullify it, but I wasn't expecting him to take it away. So I'm kind of curious to, if there's a limit, what's the limit? And if there's no limit, how many is he gonna get? Because it would be kind of lame if you showcase that and nothing comes of it. But knowing Oda, it's probably going to be a little bit more extensive, especially with the post-time skip. The Arlong arc was the one big motivation for me to keep pushing forward through One Piece because I really like the design and just the feel of Arlong. And I'm really happy to say that I got a little bit more of him, but more of past tense instead of being present. And a lot of choices that Arlong has made has come down and a little bit more stronger than he was. And I really like that this arc is kind of showing you, hey, we kind of been through these steps before, but I want to showcase how strong the Straw Hats have gotten since then. So we're going to showcase someone being very similar, but even stronger than Arlong, and we're just going to do the same thing, while also going into more depth about the racism and just prejudice that both sides are facing.
And I'm really happy that I feel like Jinbei's most definitely going to join the crew because he's way too cool to not just join the crew. And I really like that he's kind of like the Uncle Iroh of the Straw Hats. Just a little bit, but not too wise, but he's like wise enough. And I really like that the Princess Shinobi is kind of going through a similar arc like Nami did in the original Arlong arc, except it's kind of like a reverse. And I haven't concluded the situation that happened, but I have a feeling that she's going to use her siren powers, and all the Sea Kings are going to help with the Noah arc not crashing down, and she's going to be more confident. And speaking of confidence, I really like that this arc is showing me all the Straw Hats being significantly more confident, although they are still themselves and a little jokey on the side. They are a lot more serious and a lot more confident. Like, I was not expecting to absolutely be astounded by Usopp, Chopper, or Sanji. I was like, wow, you guys have improved. Although I'm not a huge fan of the character designs for Chopper and Frankie and Nico. It's really cool to see that everyone's super confident in their own capabilities, and it's just showcasing, hey, this is how strong they are, but so you guys know, when we get to Kaido and all them, it's gonna be a lot more. I know I'm reiterating myself, but I'm trying to say it's nice to see that they're showcasing the strength that the Straw Hats are currently at, so that when we get to the stronger enemies, it really demonstrates how powerful that Luffy needs to overcome those such strong enemies. Because for me, it feels like it's going to be a rehash of everything that I've kind of experienced for the first 500 episodes, but it's going to do it again, but on a scale of emperors and maybe almost universal. To which, once you reach this state of getting universal powers, where do you go from there? And how do you tie up everything from there? Because you can only go so far with the power system before it kind of just doesn't have any major effect. Because you can only make the Straw Hats so strong and so powerful before it kind of becomes everyone's just fodder. And I'm not worried that they're gonna be indestructible forever. I'm just worried that there won't be importance. I think I'm just trying to say that I want to see the Straw Hats struggle, but I want to see what's the point of that struggle. Because we got all that pre-time skip, and I will miss the pre-time skip. I think that was a really good setting up everything. But now it just kind of feels okay, now we're into a bigger piece of the story. Now we're in chapter 1, essentially, of everything that's going to happen. And I'm just curious to where it's going to go. But that's going to be it for this update, because all I'm going to do is just reiterate myself 1,000 times, and I don't really want to do that. But it's been a pleasant surprise, and so far for Fishman Island, I would say it's a 7 out of 10. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 596 episodes of One Piece, and I think I have some thoughts about it. Currently, where I'm at is Luffy is fighting Caesar Clown, and I don't really know what's going to happen, but I want to talk about the main feelings about Fishman Island. Now, the biggest thing that got me through One Piece at the very beginning of my journey about a month ago, I really liked Arlong Park. I really liked Nami's storyline. I really liked the whole setting of Arlong Arc. But I didn't necessarily get as much as I would have wanted. And that was okay at the time, because I was just happy to have something absolutely insane to be shown, because I was not expecting at the time anamorphic creatures or designs. I thought that was insane. So I was really looking forward to Fishman Island, and I'm not gonna lie, I recently found out that a lot of people don't like Thriller Bark, and a lot of people really don't like Fishman Island. And I understand why people don't like it, but personally for me, I like Hody as a villain. I didn't need him to be complex, and being completely shallow and just being I have no reason to hate humans. I just hate him. And he's essentially Arlong on steroids. I really appreciate Fishman Island because it was just showcasing how far Luffy and his crew has come since the introduction of Arlong, which was so long ago. And I really appreciate that it showcased that Arlong was just a bum, a pathetic bum. He's just a bum. And as for regards about Sanji and his whole, perverted nature, I just tune him out. I do the best I can to tune him out, and Punk Hazard so far has been a little bit hard. But that's because Sanji is currently in Nami's body, and, that's been annoying. But I appreciate Zoro trying to, keep it mediated and, keep it down a little bit. But no, I was just really surprised to find out that a lot of people don't like Fishman Island, and I know it's pretty high ranking, but like I'm just trying to understand everything that I'm watching at the current rate that I am. And I know there might be recency bias. I can't really help it, but I like Fishman Island. I like Skypiea. I like Alabasta. I haven't really disliked any arc besides the Foxy Pirates and Long Island. Everything else has been like a 5, 6, 7 out of 10, and nothing's been like a solid 10 out of 10 for me. Not even Marineford, even though I thought it would be, but my expectations for it are way too high. And now that I'm in Punk Hazard, it's been really interesting to just see dragons be more canonically made sense. But so long ago, I had found this arc that I really loved. It was talking about dragons, and I was really appreciative of the time how much that they introduced dragons so early on. But then I found out later on from the community that it's a non-canon, and I was really disappointed about that. So now to see canonical dragons, I like the design, but like I just wish I had those dream dragons back, because I like those dragon designs a lot more than what I got. But I'm gonna just take it at face value, as that's my first dragon that I gotta see. So I'm hoping that later on, if I do get to see more dragons, which I hope there is, I hope I get to see like plethora of designs. That's what I want. But I forgot to mention that in episode 549, I got my first mention of Joy Boy. Who is he? And that's kind of what's been frustrating me a lot about Punk Hazard, is I wanted to know more about Joy Boy and everything about that, because the one thing that they said was 800 years ago, Joy Boy promised a mermaid with siren powers to talk to the Sea Kings that he will come back and save the island. And it so happens to be Luffy, so I'm like, is there a bit of a connection there? Is Oda trying to tell me something? Or is Joy Boy just a completely separate character? Which, I guess that would be kind of cool, but like, I just want to know more about Joy Boy. But they did mention Wano in the Fishman Island arc, and now I'm getting a little bit more details about Wano. Not too much, but just enough. And what I mean is I'm introduced to the samurai whose legs are all over the place because of Dr. Law, which, by the way, Dr. Law is a very cool character. I don't know what he's doing, but he's just... I think it's the voice actor. I don't know his name, but the dubbed voice actor has just been absolutely scratching an itch for my ear. But so far for Punk Hazard, I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the funniest arc that I've watched so far. There's been plethora of moments where I've actually laughed out loud a little bit, and that surprised me. Specifically, there was a moment where Usopp and Robin and Luffy and Zoro were gonna try and go across the lake, and they were trying to figure out what to do. And Luffy being like, oh, it's gonna be great, you guys are gonna help us swim across, and it pans over to Zoro just stretching. He's like, oh my god, I don't know, this has just been a very funny arc for me. Visually, it's just been kind of meh though. Like I just don't feel too attached to like the visual style of this arc, which is a shame, because I really look forward to seeing different arcs and seeing what kind of visual designs they're gonna do, especially when Thriller Bark was introduced and I got that whole Scooby-Doo vibe, which I should mention I was also surprised that's why people hate it. They're like, I hate this Scooby-Doo vibe, which, come on. But I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out what is the point of Punk Hazard at this moment, which I'm trying to not ruin it for myself. I'm just it feels like nothing has really happened, so I'm just kind of like, which is incredibly unfair, but I feel like there's nothing that's been really of note to grab, and I'm just kind of waiting around at this point. And I know Caesar Clown is kind of interesting, but with him, like, and his poison and all that, that's kind of cool, but I just want to be done. And it's not because Punk Hazard is bad, it's just like, nothing feels relevant right now, and I just kind of want to move forward from this arc. It's kind of weird for how I feel right now. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad by any means. It's been good enough. But as for like the last few arcs that I've been watching, it just kind of feels okay, which is so weird, because I'm so polarized with this entire situation. I'm not finished, so who knows how I will feel by the end of it. But as of right now, I'm just feeling very tug between I love this, I hate this, and I don't really know how to feel. I just want to know what the hell is Joy Boy. I want to know more about Wano. I want to know more about Smoker, because I haven't seen Smoker as much, and I want to see more Smoker. I want to know what the hell is going on with Tashigi. I want to see her like get to near levels of Zoro. And, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Punk Hazard is bad. It's definitely dark. Like, I was not expecting it to be as dark as it is, but, that's been interesting. It just kind of feels like it's not really Chopper's arc. It doesn't feel like it's Luffy's arc. It kind of just feels like it's nobody's arc, and I just don't know what we're doing here. But I know I'm probably midway of this, so that's why I'm probably at this weird consensus, and maybe they're just screaming at me, just finish it, which tomorrow I will. But I apologize if this is all over the place. I'm kind of just confused on how to feel about this. It's been good, I think, but I just don't know how to feel. Anywho, you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 631 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. I have finished the Punk Hazard arc, the tiny weird mini arc, and now I'm in Dressrosa, where Luffy and Frankie are disguised, and they just found out that in the Colosseum, Don Flamingo's giving away a Logia-type fruit that is exactly Fire Ace's. Firstly, I want to say Momo's father, forgive me, I don't remember his name. I would love if he was able to get the Logia-type fruit, because, a fire samurai with fire capabilities just sounds very cool. But I doubt that will happen. What will probably more likely happen is Luffy's just gonna be like, how dare you spit on my brother's memory, I'm gonna kick your ass, I'm gonna be king of the pirates, and Don Flamingo's gonna be like, what? Which I'm also wondering, how is Dressrosa gonna be paced, because apparently that's a big boy package, and I don't know how long it's going to be. I try and not see where the end goal is for these arcs. I just try and go through, and when it's like, okay, let's party, let's say our goodbyes, that gives me a signal of like, oh, okay, this is how much. Mainly so I don't spoil for myself, and also just to see, like, how long will it go? Like, if I found out how long Marineford was, maybe my feelings on it wouldn't be as initially harsh. But because I didn't, and the way that I experienced it, it kind of left me with a bitter taste. But besides that, I will say Caesar Clown is an okay villain. I can forgive him for being part of, like, the darkest arc I've seen so far, and also being responsible for human-made devil fruits, which I'm curious to what is the problem with that, because devil fruits are going to be very potent, and I wonder if making them, there's a bigger risk, and since it's only Zoan types, I don't know how that's gonna go. I do look forward to seeing more showcases of the Zoan types, and hopefully that can give me more information or understanding of, like, Chopper's human fruit, because he's technically a Zoan type as well, so I'm hoping that it'll give me a bit more information about Chopper. But I was really surprised to see Momo being a dragon. I was actually very surprised, and I actually love his little design, him being pink, and the Chinese traditional dragon. I really like that. But I've gotten a lot of mention of Wano, so I wonder if him and his father are going to separate at some point in Dressrosa, and Luffy will meet up with them in Wano. And I doubt it'll happen because, I never know with One Piece and the way they do their times. But I'm hoping that I will see Momo when he's, like, slightly older, maybe like a teenager, and he's able to get a little bit more control of his powers. But I doubt it. I'm very curious to what the situation with the whole pet fruit arc was. Maybe it's a point of, like, bonding with Law and Luffy, so then when Law actually shows Luffy, hey, we're going to be killing Kaido, he might try and convince him otherwise, or push him harder. Because if Luffy fights Kaido, and from the sounds of it, it's probably not a good idea, because from the sounds of it, it's like Luffy's going to be fighting a god, essentially, from the way they're making him sound. And if Luffy does kill him, what will that do to him psychologically? Because Luffy has never killed anybody. He hasn't killed Axe-Hand Morgan, he hasn't killed Don Krieg, Crocodile, anybody. So I'm wondering what is the point and what will happen, and if Luffy will actually follow through with the plan, because, Luffy does his own things. But I do know that when he does fight Kaido, whenever he does, he's gonna unlock Gear 5, which is an unfortunate spoiler that I am aware of, but, the internet loves One Piece. And I'm very surprised that, like, that's one of the biggest and only really big spoilers that I've had for One Piece so far. So without the context, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty. But I will say, in a summary, that Punk Hazard is an okay arc, but I didn't really love it. It is the funniest, so I will give it that. I wasn't a huge fan of that pet fruit situation. I was kind of like, I'm glad it's 2 episodes, but I could have gone without it, I'm not gonna lie. And for Dressrosa, I'm looking forward to seeing more of Flamingo because there's something about him that just seems so enticing. And I was really grateful to see Tashigi and Smoker again. I mean, I'm a little sad that for 20 episodes they were getting their asses handed to them. But I hope after the situation, Smoker kind of gets like a small little upgrade because he does a little bit more training or something. I just want to see more Smoker and Tashigi. That's my entire point of them, and I don't want to tread too much on it. The fan service aspect of the show has gotten significantly a lot more hard to try and tune out. Especially when Momo was like, pretending to be like, oh, I'm so upset. And then he's just rubbing his face in Nami and Robin. And I'm like, shamefully, I won't lie. The first time that it happened and Sanji and Brooke and his father were kind of scolding him, it did make me laugh at that moment. But since it's happened again and again, I'm a little annoyed. But it seems like it's mostly a Toei problem because I've seen a couple pictures of Robin and Nami in the manga, and they look great. And they look proportionately correct, and they just look wonderful, and they're smiling, and they're happy, and it was drastic. I'm really surprised. But I feel like it's only going to get more egregious as they go on, because apparently with the way that women dress in Dressrosa, I don't look forward to how Sanji and Brooke are going to be. I'm not going to lie. But currently Sanji's chasing Zoro because a fairy stole his sword, so I'm curious to how that's going to go down. And there's also a blind man who has a X on his forehead, and I'm curious about him because what the hell? And now I'm just kind of like reiterating myself to an annoying extent, but I'm trying to say there's a lot more questions that I'm now getting, and I'm kind of getting a little overwhelmed with how much information I'm being fed. Don Flamingo being a distributor for Kaido, and Caesar Clown being the producer for Don Flamingo and Kaido. And now they're retreading Ace's situation as well, and I'm like, okay, this is a lot, but I also want to know about Joy Boy and Wano, so like, can you guys give me some information about that too? But I don't know. So far, I've been really enjoying what the style of Dressrosa has been going for. I really like the beach kind of aesthetic that it's got going, and I can't wait to see Don Flamingo and Luffy fight. I don't know when, but I'm excited. Anywho, you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 678 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. After Punk Hazard and now getting to Dressrosa, I'm not gonna lie, they're both extremely depressing, and this arc has honestly been kind of hard to get through. Because of Kuros's flashback was a little bit of a knife stab to the heart. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the whole situation beforehand, before we got to SOP and got Usopp's God Usopp moment. Sanji surprisingly not being as annoying. But like, all the toys are back to being human, and things are starting to fall apart, and Doflamingo is beyond pissed. The fact that Doflamingo was a privileged character who was part of the Celestial Dragons, and he just wanted to abandon ship just because he wants to do what? He wants to be a wannabe gangster? He reminds me a lot of Arasaka's son. Forgive me, I can't remember. It's been a while since I played Cyberpunk. But the villain in that, he went away from his father's reign and decided to make up his own little gang and just trying to be something that he's obviously not. And he's got this money and he's got this privilege, and that definitely helps him get to where he wants. But I'm grateful to get like Marines or Celestial Dragons, who are very honorable characters, to abandon their post and become something heinous like the Heavenly Demon, which that's a very cool nickname for Doflamingo. And Sanji, I'm not gonna lie, he really surprised me. I thought he was gonna be really annoying, especially with the aspect that Dressrosa and all the women dressing scandalous. And yet Sanji was more so kind of like a early 2000s romance TV, kind of like a really bad Hallmark movie. And honestly, if I get Sanji just to act like a Hallmark movie instead of as perverted as he usually is, he might just end up getting up in the ladder just a little bit more. But I'm curious to see what will happen and if my feelings for Sanji will change, because right now, I'm liking him. It's just a good enough balance of, that's almost too much, but you didn't cross that line, so I appreciate that. It's weird because, like, I've mentioned a lot how I don't like Sanji and his perverted nature because it reminds me a lot of Zenitsu from Demon Slayer, but for some reason, he's been almost a saint this arc, and I appreciate that. I also love the fact that Sabu was the one to get Fire Fist Ace's Logia fruit. I appreciate that a lot. I wasn't expecting him to show up, and I didn't believe he was dead because One Piece doesn't really kill anybody. I'm just happy to see Sabu, and I'm really, really happy that he was the one to get the Logia fruit. That just makes me look forward to what might happen. Law, I don't know how to feel about Law. I'm kind of conflicted on how I should feel about him. Right now, he's currently knocked out, I think, because, he got his ass handed to him by Doflamingo, and I want to like Law, but I'm just kind of waiting for the moment that I should probably like Law. And, I'm so surprised with how the pacing so far of this arc has been. It's just been non-stop, kept me hooked, and it just keeps moving forward, and nothing has felt like it's dragged at all. If anything, it's just kept me going and going and going, and I'm like, this has been a surprisingly well-paced arc. And maybe I'm tooting my own horn right now too much, but maybe it'll change with the lighter episodes, because there's going to be a lot of cleanup, and there's going to be a lot of, farewells. I mean, Kyros is going to be human, he's gonna see Rebecca, and I wonder how that's gonna go. But I don't really have any complaints about this arc so far. I mean, maybe if I were to think of something right now, I was a little upset that Usopp was almost having his Syrup Village moment, because he's trained and he's gone so far from where he started, and I was really upset for a moment, thinking that he's just gonna be reverting back to his old ways, and I was not looking forward to it. And unintentionally or intentionally so, he saved them, and I'm very proud of Usopp, and he also is getting so much praise from all the other pirates, which I wonder how that's gonna do when he's all healed up. But I'm really surprised that Zoro hasn't really shown off any hype moments from him, because Zoro is always fun. I always look forward to seeing Zoro fight. He's dealt with Monet, and I really love that moment. That was so cool with the one sword style and all that, but I haven't seen much of Zoro, surprisingly, and I'm glad that Usopp is getting a bit of appreciation and some love. I just want some love and appreciation for Nico Robin and Nami, and hopefully Chopper, maybe Frankie. Frankie, I'm not gonna lie, I'm so conflicted with how I want to feel about him. I still really hate his character design, but he's such a fun character and reminds me of my uncle, and I just... But so far, Dressrosa, I mean, I'm only 670 episodes in, and I'm very happy. It's been a very good arc, and I honestly have no complaints, and I feel like I'm just going to keep reiterating myself if I go on. So I guess right now, that will be it. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 711 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Currently, I have consumed so much that I have no idea what is happening, because it feels like nothing has happened, but that's because so much has happened, if that makes any sense. I definitely won't be able to recap everything that I've seen so far, but currently Zoro is fighting Pika still. Luffy's now dealing with Bellamy, just, having a crash out. Kyros and Rebecca are fighting one of the executives, and there's so much. Korra was a really cool introduction of a character. I really like seeing Korra, and his design was honestly, so far has been one of my favorite new designs that I've seen from a anti-hero. And forgive me, I'm gonna mispronounce some of the names, but a character like Rooster or Bartolomeo, I find him to be a little bit crude, but not too annoying. I honestly am kind of intrigued by him and his devil fruit powers of the barrier fruit. Usopp pulling another legendary moment with an insane sniping ability. I don't know what that was for a moment. I don't know if he has observation hockey as well, or if he just has some sort of infrared capability. So how is he able to see the aura of Luffy as well as Law? And I see Trafalgar Law's backstory and everything that's happened there, and I found it to be okay. I didn't really find it to be really anything interesting. And his whole backstory of the white lead and that disease, that was interesting for a moment, but I had no attachment. His relationship with Korra, I found Korra to be
almost endearing character. I really like his calm fruit capabilities, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of zoned out and was just thinking of like some video game characters with the calm fruit and how overpowered that would be, like, I don't know, Agent 47. And him dying due to his brother, you know, being absolutely insane is unfortunate, but what can you do about it? I will say Bellamy is dragging this bit a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Seeing Bellamy, I never really liked him to begin with, and seeing his backstory, and yeah, it's sappy, it's sad, and unfortunate that someone that he looked up to is just a huge piece of shit. But with everything that's going on, I just have no interest in Bellamy or his situation. I'm more interested in everything else that's surrounding him, which is unfortunate because I understand what they're trying to do with Bellamy, but like, there's the Blind Admiral who has insane meteor powers. I honestly thought him and Akinu had the same devil fruit powers, but he also has gravity as well, which, The Blind Admiral and his capabilities are very confusing because I don't know what his power set is. It seems like he has like 2 different power sets, and it's kind of insane. And I'm curious if he's gonna fight Luffy after Luffy finishes off Doflamingo, but what would the point of that be? I don't understand. I know that they're Straw Hats and they're Marines and there's beef about that, but the biggest issue is Dressrosa, and Luffy's going to be saving this. So is the Blind Admiral going to let him go, let it slide? Or is he going to be a bit of a nuisance and then, I don't know. It's just, I don't know when Dressrosa is going to end. And I'm not looking forward to when it ends because I've been really enjoying this arc. Like, thought I would have an issue with the pacing because a lot of people told me it's a beefy package, and it is a beefy package, and there's no denying. But so far, I haven't really felt like the pacing has dragged. Like, it's kept me hooked, it's kept me interested, and it's kept me going, and it kind of makes me sad because I wish that was there from the beginning from other arcs, but I know Oda was just still putting things together and piecing everything. But Oda, I have an issue with you because why the hell is Rebecca dressed like that? I didn't mention it in my last post, only in the captions, but why is Rebecca dressed like that? I found her to be a very interesting character, especially with the whole aspect of the kingdom, like, not really pursuing violence, they're just pacifists. And yet you have such a cool character redeemed down to just, oh, look, in this demeaning armor. And I'm kind of sad that they're not fighting with their dad at the moment, but I hope they get the courage to fight with their father because I really like Rebecca. Rebecca's a very interesting character, which I would say is a lot better than most of the female protagonists that I've seen. Like Fishman Island, the mermaid was really cool, but all she was reduced to was just crying, and that was the joke. And I don't really like the fact that, like, almost every single arc, I just have an issue that the princes have more of a say and more of a footing than princesses do. And all the princesses that I've seen are just cared for, babied, and, like, that makes sense, but, like, there's other princesses that are more capable. I just don't, what I'm trying to say is I don't really see much quality with the princesses and seeing them being as capable. If not, they're always being, like, reduced to, like, oh, hey, you're the damsel, just stay over there. And I don't really like the fact that everyone's just being kind of like a damsel in distress, so it's kind of disappointing to see that's how a lot of the high nobles that I've seen are. But I'm hoping that Rebecca is able to do something, and I don't know. Dressrosa has just been very good, and I'm all over the place mentally, so, like, I apologize. But I've so far been really enjoying Dressrosa. It might even be almost a 9 out of 10, because so far it's been great, but I have no idea where it's going to end, so who knows, maybe it'll dip and it might go to an 8. I don't know. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 760 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. I'm not gonna lie, I've been trying to record this video for the last 2 days, and I've been struggling to put my thoughts together. But I'm hoping with my scuffed notes I'll be able to be on task. So, Dressrosa, solid 9 out of 10, man. I apologize for bringing this up again, but I think Dressrosa confirms the fact that I love Fishman Island just as much. Although Fishman Island is not a 9 out of 10, I will say I like the fact that I got to see 2 of the same storylines essentially, but different experiences. And what I mean is that Hody inherited the hatred, Doflamingo experienced the hatred, but Hody wasn't able to utilize or weaponize those ideas, but Doflamingo was able to.
For me, it really worked out that Hody looked up with resentment and Doflamingo was looking down with contempt. And I know that they're facing different situations and different arcs, but at the same core, the entire thing is hate. And I should also mention right now for Doflamingo that I really appreciated that his durability didn't really feel like a tanking issue. It felt like he was a relentless threat. Because, don't get me wrong, Gear 2 and Gear 3 was a really cool introduction to Luffy's power-up, but it felt like almost an instant answer to the situation at hand, and I really didn't love that. But with Bounce Man being a thing, I really appreciate that Doflamingo was still able to trip up Luffy and make him hit his limitations, so Luffy didn't get an instant win and it had to be earned. Senior Pink's entire backstory was incredibly rough and honestly was really hard to get through. But I think this arc made me love Frankie a lot more because I really appreciate that it hammered home the message of how much of a bro Frankie is, and I appreciate that entire arc. I would say Frankie and Senior Pink's bro fight was probably my favorite aspect of Dressrosa. Don't get me wrong, getting through the Coliseum was really cool, and being able to see the executives is really cool, but I feel like the message for Frankie and Senior Pink was a lot more meaningful than a lot of the other fights that were happening, and I'm not saying that they weren't good. I just prefer Frankie and Senior Pink's out of everyone's. And I have no complaints about Sabo. I really like Sabo. He's amazing. As for Fujiwara, and I apologize if I butchered or mispronounced the names, it's bound to happen, I'm sorry. But I actually written down a quote he said, because he said, "If you're so intent on making your way to hell, allow me to guide you." Ugh. One Piece has a lot of really good quotes. Like, there's a lot of really great and memorable quotes throughout the series, but for some reason, that quote right there just was... I had to stop everything I was doing and just replay that section again because, oh my lord. And I really like the fact that a self-mutilated blind man was wanting to see Luffy. That's such a... I just like that. The only thing that I would really say that upset me about the whole Dressrosa arc is the fact that I didn't understand more about the smile. Like, it's a Zoan-type homemade devil fruit, and I didn't really see much of the consequences of that, and I'm hoping that later on I'll get to see more of that situation, and how Doflamingo's reign and everything about him, conjuring up this mixture. But we'll see what happens with that. For Bartolomeo, I actually really liked. I was worried about Bartolomeo. I thought he was going to be a really annoying, obsessive fan, but he was not. I ended up loving him by the time we got to Zou, and he has said goodbye to Luffy and everything. I also love the fact that everybody, despite Luffy being like, no, don't do it, and everyone being like, I don't care, we're doing the Straw Hat Fleet, and whether he intended to or not, Luffy's exactly like Gold D. Rogers and Whitebeard. It's really cool to see that Luffy's being able to represent some aspects of Shanks, some aspects of Rogers, some aspects of Whitebeard, and some aspects of Ray Lee. I don't have much to say about Cavendish other than I think that's the voice actor for Flock and Attack on Titan. He's a cool character, I guess. He does remind me a lot of Zenitsu and the whole split personality and the sleep thing, but I don't know what to think about Cavendish. He's kind of interesting. I would love to see him, Sanji, and the handsome pirate that Sanji, messed up his face. I would love to see those three interact and just see how they would be. And I appreciate that Rebecca resented about the fact of being a princess and she chose to live out her life with her dad. I appreciate that a lot. There's not much to say, but now that I'm on Zou, I have I have questions. I got to see Kaido and he looks insane. Kaido was not at all what I thought he would look like, and I'm really curious to what that's gonna be. I'm very excited for Kaido. But before I get lost and everything else, for Zou and this entire elephant situation, I'm so lost and confused. But the animation improvement with Zou right now is insane. The biggest thing that I've noticed is the dramatic colors and the colors popping out a lot more, the shading being a bit more intense, and it feeling a little bit more cinematic. And so I've seen a couple of the fights so far, and I am looking forward to when Luffy gets into bigger, more dangerous fights, because the animation just looks insane. I really love the colors right now. I don't know what else to say. But one thing that I am confused about is the Conqueror's Spirit, right? There's that. But apparently Luffy has the Supreme King Haki. What? I'm not gonna lie, seeing the red and black hockey, I was just getting really bad flashbacks of like the Black Flash from JJK, and I don't know what's happening. I'm so lost and confused about that. But like, I was really surprised about Dressrosa's pacing because I thought it would be an issue because it is a big boy package, but I was able to thoroughly enjoy the entire thing without it feeling like it was taking too much time. And I was really worried it was going to have like 5 or 6 episodes where everybody parties, because there's a few moments where arcs would extend it to like 3, 4, 5 episodes, then the goodbye. But it was really brief, and I appreciate that, so thank you. But for the aspect about like Brooke, Sanji, Chopper, Nami, I don't know what's happening. I'm kind of lost and confused about this whole Zoe situation. But I'm hoping that Luffy and Chopper, I don't know how they'll be able to do it, but I would love if they were able to somehow talk to this elephant that they're on, because the elephant has been alive for about 1,000 years and Joy Boy existed about 800 years, so the elephant was like 200, I'm guessing, by the time Joy Boy was a thing, and I'm hoping I'll get information about that. But if not, that's okay, I guess. I'm just happy that this has been very fun. But I'm also really loving the fact that I'm getting a lot more anamorphic creatures, so I've been thoroughly enjoying Zoe as much as I've been enjoying Dressrosa. But now I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the whole like samurai situation, because there's apparently some tension about that, and I don't know what's happening. But the last thing I will say is Brooke and the whole situation of the dogs wanting to bite him and chew on his bones, that bit has been making me laugh a lot. But anywho, you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and but hi, I will be doing well. Currently, I've watched 773 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. I needed some time to recuperate because I thought that this would be another arc dealing with prejudices. I thought this would be like a trilogy, and I'm very glad to be proven wrong that with the Minks and the Samurai actually being best friends and allies. I'm very relieved by that, because for a moment I was worried that Zoe was going to retread some things that Fishman Island and Dressrosa have kind of already addressed so heavily, which is prejudice in different forms and aspects and all the oppression that they do. Which, don't get me wrong, Fishman Island, Dressrosa are amazing, and I was like, okay, we're doing this again, I might need a break. So I didn't watch any episodes, and here we are, and literally the first episode I watched today, they're like, they're best friends. I'm like, but besides that, I did have a commenter a while ago on my update being like, hey, so you know, Kinemon is just a guardian, which I appreciate that comment a little bit. I mean, it's relieving. Just, I don't want spoilers for One Piece. And I understand that a lot of you are just here to, you know, see the journey as I'm experiencing it and noticing that I'm slowly, if not getting more engrossed to the series as I am. But I'm just trying to make sure that I don't get spoiled, because even now with the TikTok algorithm is also going against me, because as I post these One Piece updates for you, it's really hard to try and avoid these spoilers. So it's been very difficult, because I feel like every time I post an update that's getting closer to the current status of where One Piece is, I'm getting a lot more new gen One Piece spoilers, and I've been trying to avoid it like no other. But other than that, I apologize. I would say Zoe has so far been very enjoyable. I'm very happy to get more information about the Poneglyph. A little sad I don't get information about Joy Boy. I am fiending for information. But the only things that I feel like that this arc is currently doing is Zoe is going to set everything up, because Sanji's gone, so that means Zoe, then Whole Cake Island, and then Kaido, which I'm guessing that's Wano. Which, that means if it's in Wano and there's Gear 5 in Wano, that means I got like 300 or 400 more episodes before I could see those two fight. No issues about that, but I am curious. I thought Big Mama would be really equivalent to Kaido's like tenacity, but I'm really surprised that I'm not getting much Big Mama moments. I'm getting a lot of Kaido, which then also leads me to this, where Jack is currently trying to shoot and kill this elephant that they're all on, which I don't think it'll work. But I'm curious if Luffy's actually going to fight one of Kaido's underlings, and if he'll actually realize there's levels to this shit, because it looks like that guy has the ancient Zoan type, a mammoth, which that is insane. That is so cool. I never thought that would happen, but anywho. I feel like this is all just going to be giant moments of like, hey, so you know, this is where Kaido is. Luffy's right here, so like, get ready.
which that's cool and all. But for Sanji, I have a lot of questions because I do remember when we were fighting the Baroque's organization, and I believe it was right after they escaped number 3's trap and Sanji just got back to the group and was like, oh, I talked to Crocodile. He did briefly mention that he lived in the North Blue, and I thought nothing of it, but then when they revealed that the North Blue was on the other side of the Grand Line and he was in the East Blue, where Luffy got him, okay. So now I'm feeling like that the whole situation for Zoe is just going to be a setup, and I apologize if I'm reiterating. And then we're going to go to Whole Cake Island and deal with Sanji, and I feel like Sanji is going to probably get a redemption arc. Because you know my feelings about Sanji. I want to like Sanji, and I do like his chivalry. I do like a lot of aspects about Sanji. It's just his perverted nature goes a little too far, and it's mostly, from the sounds of it, the studio's fault, which is such a weird thing to see. Like, I know some studios like MAPPA, they really hated Naoya, and they made sure you saw those impact frames 4 or 5 times. But I've never seen a studio so egregiously hate a character, and that's been really shed a different light for me to watch One Piece. And honestly, with that knowledge of like, oh, Toei absolutely hates Sanji and they love Zoro, it's kind of given me a little bit of forgiveness for Sanji and the way he's been. I'm like, all right, I'll put you, you're in timeout, but I get it. So I'm hoping that with this Whole Cake Island situation, Oda's like, hey guys, I know you don't like Sanji, but let me tell you why. You're wrong. And also, Sanji being able to skywalk and pull off certain moves, it makes sense now that I think about it, with his father being one of the leaders for one of the assassination organizations. That's cool. But I'm hoping for like Zoe, since it just mostly seems like to be a setup and like a giant war setup, to be honest. So I feel like it's going to be like a Marineford 2.0 is what we're going for. Whole Cake Island, I want to know more about the Zoan and the Smiles, so I hope I get that. And then when we get to Wano, I just hope we get another Poneglyph and hopefully figure out more things about Joy Boy. Like, he's been mentioned and he's slowly getting more relevance, and I just want to know more. The first thing that I still remember is when Nico Robin first read the thing where Rogers left his signature, where Joy Boy apologized to the mermaid. And then Luffy saving Fishman Island, and I want to see if there's a correlation with that. But I haven't gotten much Joy Boy information at all, and I'm really surprised, and I feel like I'm just kind of like being led with a carrot on a stick right now. But I don't want to reiterate myself too much, as I've only watched maybe like 10 episodes since I've last updated, so my apologies. But there's just so much that's happening, and I'm really surprised how much information that I've been getting in these last 10 episodes. And the last thing that I'll say that's relatively relevant, I really appreciate the fact that this entire journey that I've been with on Luffy and his crew, and him going to these different islands with different princesses and princes, and a lot of them have been around his age or just a little bit younger. So one thing that I really look forward to whenever we get to the end of One Piece, which, who knows, 7 years maybe, because for me, I think that a lot of the princesses and the princes see Luffy as kind of like this insanely ambiguous older brother. And when Luffy finally gets that goal, he's essentially raising this new generation full of confidence, full of ambition, full of energy. Because whether Luffy intended to or not, he's kind of gone the route of like Goldie Rogers, or more exclusively, I should say, like the Whitebeard pirates, where the Whitebeard pirates are able to have territories and they are able to protect people. Luffy's just kind of gone to almost every single island and everybody loves him. So by the time he gets to the One Piece, almost like being hailed as a god. But I don't know how that's gonna go for Luffy. I'm so focused on like the end aspect, and I know that's not gonna come for some time. But Zoe right now just kind of feels like the beginning of the midway of the story. And Wano is kind of like the end of the second act, and perhaps Elbaf is going to be the beginning of the third act. So I'm hoping that with these next 2 acts that I will hopefully get is more information about Shanks, because I keep hearing that everybody knows him, but I haven't seen Shanks. The last time that I seen Shanks was in Marineford. I haven't seen him since. I keep hearing that everybody knows him, but god damn it, I just want to see more information about Shanks. I just want to know what he's doing. I want to know what kind of person. Should I root for him? Should I be like, oh no? But maybe after like Luffy takes out one of the two emperors or both of the emperors, that Blackbeard, Shanks, and maybe Buggy are going to be more of a focus. I don't know. But there's just so much that's happening that I'm like, hey, Oda, I hope you're not forgetting about this part right here, because that would be really unsatisfying if you did. But I know Oda will probably remember, and he will make sure that, it's satisfying. And I think the only reason why I'm so loud about it is I have watched 774 episodes of One Piece. I am very happy that I started this journey 2 months ago. It's been insane for how much I've been able to consume. It's been insane to see the journey. And I honestly didn't think I would like One Piece. I thought One Piece would be something that I kind of enjoy. But as for the story, I can't say I love it, but I enjoy One Piece a lot. And I'm hoping that whenever we get to that conclusion, that it will be worth it and not so half-ass. And I don't know. I just have a lot of anxiety, to be honest, for Oda, because you have built a very thoroughly detailed world, and you have been very meticulous about what you've done. And yet, there's so much that is still not answered, and I'm hoping that you can do it. I didn't have faith in you, Oda, but right now I am begging and hoping and praying that this just works out. This was a lot longer than I intended, so I apologize, but anywho, you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 801 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Sanji's family is full of D-bags. Luffy's currently trying to get his 10 minutes rest so he can fight the Biscuit Man. Chopper and the Minks are trying to find out where Sanji is. Brook, I don't know what he's up to, but he's scouting, I think. But for the Biscuit Fruit guy, I'm not really impressed. I'm just kind of like, alright, well, this is going to be a lot of food-based Devil Fruit users, which I don't know how to feel about. Because it kind of early on, I wasn't expecting to see a showcase so early, but for Big Mama's Soul Fruit, I wasn't expecting that, and that's kind of all I want to know more about. I am also getting a little bit of information about Germa 66 and what their big secret is, but I kind of stopped before I got the big reveal, so I can get back to it and have something maybe more exciting to talk about. But for Big Mama, I already have like a little feeling that what might happen. Like, I saw the game where she was playing roulette with Jinbei, so I wonder if she's going to do the same thing to Luffy. And Luffy's going to probably go along with it because his friends are captured, and he's going to probably do a game of gambling. And perhaps after he gambles however much of his life away, I wonder if that will awaken his awakened state. Because, forgive me, but I can't recall which Devil Fruit user it was, but they were near the brink of death, and then they got an awakening and were able to come out stronger. So I'm wondering if that's how Luffy's going to be able to defeat Big Mama, and then, yeah, that's my only theory right now for that. And for Sanji's family, I don't think I need any more information. I just want to see them all get a serious ass whooping, because holy shit, they have made me so angry. There's a lot of aspects about Sanji's history that's being revealed that there's some things that I can relate to a certain extent. So with my own personal biases, I'm quite angry, and some of the men just beat this poor cook, and I just want Sanji to humble the shit out of all of his brothers. And his sister, I don't know what's wrong with his sister. I just feel like there's a weird little vibe, and I just kind of, I don't know. I think his sister needs a little fixing. I don't know what's wrong with her in the head. But Sanji's father, oh my god. I cannot wait for Sanji to fight his dad, because that would be amazing. But I don't think it's going to be that simple. I honestly think it might be another situation similar to where Usopp had to leave the crew because Luffy wasn't respecting his decisions about the Going Merry and that whole situation, which Usopp did understand, but he still left the crew based on a misunderstanding. And I feel like that's going to probably happen again with Sanji, because his braces are on his hands and he's going to lose his hands. His father that he sees as his father is also at risk, and by the time I'm guessing Luffy will get to them, there's going to be so much in the way that Sanji will have to decline. So I think what will happen is Luffy's going to get rid of the Biscuit guy, which I hope sooner than later because I don't really like him. And then I think Luffy, Nami, and everyone's gonna meet up with Sanji, and they're like, hey, we got it, let's go. And Sanji's gonna be like, nah, bro. But I'm curious to what Sanji's gonna do. Like, is he gonna be able to sacrifice his ability to cook to save his friends? I only say this because the other islands have showcased different aspects of an arc. So for Thriller Bark and then the Punk Hazard seems to be more so a Chopper arc. We haven't really gotten a Zoro arc in a while, and I would like a Zoro arc, but we'll see. And I'm grateful that Sanji's finally getting his own arc, and hopefully he'll end up being like one of my favorite characters. But as of right now, because this arc is just showcasing a lot of things that I'm starting to see why they're trying to like showcase this for Sanji. A lot of his siblings could be different aspects of what Sanji could have been if he just listened to his daddy and followed the rules instead of cooking. So I'm hoping that this will be a good case of self-reflection where Sanji's like, okay, I truly need to be better because if I'm not careful, I can just end up like my brothers. Which I'm very excited to see how that will go. But other than that, I don't really know what else to say. I haven't gotten much information about any major lore events at the moment, but right now, Lola's father is helping Nami and the Seducing Woods situation. I do miss the other crewmates, and I wish they were here to help out, but I just want to see what they're up to because I get like where Marineford, it was major focus on Luffy and his entire situation, so we didn't really go back to the crew for quite some time. And I feel like that's probably going to happen again, which is unfortunate. But out of the positives of this entire situation, I'm glad Jinbei is back. And I don't know if Jinbei will actually join this time because I feel like he might have another obligation to get rid of. So I'm guessing he'll probably join the crew for a moment and then split up again before Wano. I don't know. But I'm glad to see more of Jinbei. He's always been a very fun and endearing character. I always look forward to seeing him. But yeah, I really don't know how to feel. I'm just trying to carefully listen to everything that's happening and pay as much attention as I can. Because on my last update, I got many warnings about, hey, you should really, really pay attention to Zoe and Whole Cake Island. If you don't, you're gonna miss some things. But the only thing that's really been annoying about this whole update situation is I did have one commenter spoil something about Joy Boy and Luffy, which I'm just trying to gaslight myself into not knowing about that. But to that asshat, why? Because I don't see much enjoyment of personally trying to spoil things, whether or not it is intentional or not. I do understand that you are also excited about showcasing One Piece because this is a very long journey. The series has been on for about 25, 30 years, and I know the attachment that this community has to One Piece and all the extreme opinions that I've so far seen about One Piece. And a lot of things we may not see eye to eye on, but the only thing that I have asked and want to continue to ask is don't spoil anything, because that just kind of ruins my intent of making this. Because I don't find it personally enjoyable at all to try and go through a series and then just get the biggest spoiler that might be true and just that moment's ruined for me. So, to the person that spoiled Joy Boy in that situation, all I have to say to you is I'm very disappointed and I hope it doesn't happen again. But other than that, so far for Whole Cake Island, there's a little bit of iffy vibes, but so far I've been enjoying Whole Cake Island, but I'm waiting to see what the meat of the whole situation is. But other than that, I really look forward to seeing Luffy and Big Mama and their banter, because the first time that happened, it was very amusing. So I'm curious to if there's going to be like any food banter. But yeah, I like Whole Cake Island. It's been pretty good, and I'll continue to update you when I can. So you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye. Alright, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 876 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. As a whole, Whole Cake Island is pretty disappointing for me. I'm about to watch 877, and that seems to be the goodbye episode. So, Whole Cake Island, overall, I'm guessing somewhere between a 5 or 6 out of 10. I had expected transformations for Sanji's character, but I got confirmation for the entire arc. Due to a lot of inference that I had for Sanji because I had 800 episodes, I was expecting more from this arc, but
I got confirmation more than a transformation for his character. One of the inferences that I had was the first introduction that I had for Sanji was in the Barate arc with Zeph and everything, and because of their interaction, I was able to assume that Sanji had some very bad daddy issues. He had to at least have some sort of family issues with his mom or his dad, which is the reason why he's no longer in the North Blue and how he kind of was raised by Zeph. I wasn't expecting Zeph to be the reason for his chivalry. I honestly thought it was based on his mother because from the looks of Sanji, I only assumed that he was a mama's boy. And that the reason that he loves cooking so much was because of his mother, and the code was also because of his mother. I was kind of right about that, but I wasn't 100%. Now, a lot of the characters I've already had my inferences, but a lot of the way they recontextualize characters like Nami or Nico Robin or Usopp, I feel like that was more meaningfully done than how Sanji's arc was. Being manipulated by a beautiful woman, but then it turns out she's kind of betraying her own morals and she ends up helping Sanji. I got that with Violet, and now I'm getting that again with Pudding. I do like the extra length that they showcase of like Sanji's love for always helping people and showcasing that no matter how much he cooks, he's always going to feed someone who's hungry, and Luffy going the extra mile by starving himself until Sanji came back. But I think in comparison to like Nami receiving Luffy's hat or Nico Robin screaming I want to live, or Usopp bravely demanding a duel even though he knows he would lose, I don't think they were nearly as heavy as I would want it to be, because I feel like a lot of the flashbacks that were quite repetitive, I don't know what was the situation for this arc, but the flashbacks for me were more so annoying because they felt like it was repeating the same thing over and over again. And I understand what they're trying to do for Sanji, but the recontextualization of his character didn't really work for me as well as it did for the others. And the only thing that I really was like negatively annoyed about was his sister apparently misplacing the bracelets and giving him something else to wear completely. So he always had the opportunity to run, but because of his burden of wanting to just take on all of this by himself and not asking anyone for help, I found it to be convenient. Like, I understand that a lot of the Straw Hats also have a struggle with reaching out for help and asking for help from anybody because they have been burdened to do this all by themselves. And I've seen that showcased multiple times from different angles and different characters. And for Sanji, it just kind of felt like a rehash because I thought we had already gone through this. His entire situation with Don Krieg, his entire situation whenever he fought another chef, I've seen time and time again of Sanji's morals and his principles being showcased and understood. So Whole Cake Island just felt like it was reiterating the same point. And for me, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of disappointed that Katakuri was the main focus of the fight and it wasn't Big Mom, but I know that they're gonna get to it eventually, so I'm like, you know what? I'll hold off. Because Katakuri, if anything, served as a giant XP boost for Luffy and his hockey, and that was fun. Seeing Snake Man 4th gear, I didn't know that Luffy was able to do different amplifications for it, but seeing that, it was interesting. But I really struggled with Whole Cake Island, and the pacing for this one, honestly, was killing me pretty bad. Which is crazy to say, because I thought Marineford was something that would be probably the worst pacing arc, because I really didn't like how slow and just dragged out some scenes were. And for Whole Cake Island, I really felt like it was dragging, and I kind of wish that I read the manga at this point because I was just not in the mood. Which I have not really struggled with wanting to watch One Piece. If anything, I'm always like, alright, I can't wait to get back to it, consume more and update the situation. And the only other time that I felt this way was the Fox Pirates. With the whole Davy Jones locker fight, I really struggled with that. But it's been so long, so I'm kind of like, you know, maybe with Wano they'll be able to give me a bit more, because so far Whole Cake Island has just not hit anything that I wanted. And I think I'm mainly upset because I wanted more understanding of the big world and the mysteries surrounding it. And this arc is definitely character-centric and character-focused, which I understand. But I think because of the expectations that I had for this arc, as well as everybody else hyping up for me,
I expected too much, and I'm disappointed by how much I expected. Because I didn't get any more information about any of the smiles, I didn't get much information about the poneglyphs yet. I haven't really gotten much information. Pedro, assumingly, actually did die, and the Minx having like the superpower with the full moon, that was interesting, but I just, there wasn't much for this arc for me. Like the Germa 66, they're cool and all. I got very big Voltron, Power Rangers, Powerpuff Girl vibes, and that was cool for a moment, but nothing really like was a slam home for me this arc, which is really unfortunate because I was hoping something would. And I don't mean to be so negative, I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. And I'm very sad to say that Whole Cake Island for me is probably a 6 out of 10. So until then, I'm going to get through Wano and see how that goes and see how monstrous that package is. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.
Hi, I hope you're doing well. Currently, I've watched 920 episodes of One Piece, and I have some thoughts about it. Is Wano the final threshold Luffy has before he can be considered an emperor? All the minor details I will try my best to assimilate, but right now there's a lot of big things currently happening in Wano, and my lord. Luffy encountering Kaido a lot sooner than I anticipated was not on my bucket list, but it probably should have been on my expectations. And Kaido seemingly indestructible, punching Luffy once and destroying not only his little speech of dreams and ambition, but also just showcasing how strong Kaido is physically. I appreciate that. So while Luffy is in the mines with Kid and trying to make an ensemble of a bunch of prisoner rebellions, I really like the fact that it reminded me of like a Sisyphus treatment. But Luffy being Luffy, of course, treating the Sisyphus treatment doesn't work for him. He's turning it into a mini training arc, so I'm curious to what he will do. But from my brief interaction from Kaido, I think I get the idea of what the point of the smiles is, because I've seen a few users with that, and I think I have an idea. A lot of the smile fruits seem to be incompatible with the user itself, maybe because of the animal aspect or whatever the fruit may be. There seems to be a lot of incompatibility and uncertainty with smiles as a whole. And Kaido being as strong as he is, I was curious to why he needed something like that, but then I thought about it, and he's kind of so far been showcased as like a polarization of Luffy. He's so strong that he believes he can't do it himself, and he's burdened by the strength that he carries, so I'm guessing he's using Smile to create a giant army so he doesn't be burdened to carry that strength by himself. Which for Luffy is interesting because it's been said many times that every single time that he needs to get stronger, he needs to get way more stronger than everybody else. So the difference between Kaido and Luffy right now is obviously that ideology. And everyone's currently prepping for the big event, which I'm guessing is going to be the actual main fight where Luffy's going to gear up to number 5. And for that situation with them saying like the new dawn after 20 years and everything, I think maybe Luffy or Joy Boy had a promise to Oden at some point. And he's obviously going to die because of Kaido. I've already had that part spoiled. And he's going to ascend to Gear 5, and then he will be rightfully considered an emperor. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm very excited to see Luffy ascend to new heights and get bigger and stronger. That's always fun, but my curiosity is, like, I still hope it's a pirate story by the end of the day. Like, don't get me wrong, I've been enjoying One Piece, and I've been having fun with One Piece. But so far, the way things are heading, I feel like it's going to become more or less focused on the pirate aspect of the tales and become more focused on godly and like universal stuff, which I don't really mind, but I got a little bit worried when they introduced the time fruit, and I really hope that it is just going forward and not going backwards, because if time travel is introduced, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. Time travel for me, whenever it's introduced into a story, is always iffy, and I don't know how to feel about the time fruit. That's my biggest concern. And another big concern, because I know Big Mom is on her way, and I don't know what's going to happen with Luffy and Kid and everything, but my biggest concern about Big Mom is because Kaido is getting so many moments where he's hyped up, and because Kaido seems completely unbothered by Big Mom, I'm really worried that Big Mom is just going to be sidelined and not really treated as a meaningful threat. So, like, if she appears, they're going to be like, oh, we got to deal with her as well because, you know,
Luffy's busy. And then they're going to pull some things out of their ass and somehow defeat Big Mom. And I really hope that isn't the case. And I'm hoping that maybe Luffy will put Big Mom in her place. I doubt it, but I'm hoping. Like maybe Big Mom shows up after the fight with Kaido and tries to play dirty because there seems to be no rules against them being dirty. So I'm curious if Big Mom is going to probably go after Luffy after that, but I don't know how that's... Maybe it's another time limit situation similar to like Gear 3, Gear 4. I don't know. But so far, everyone on this arc, I'm glad to see everyone again. It's been very fun. I don't know what's happening. There's just so much information, and my brain is overwhelmed right now because there's so much that's happening. But so far for Wano as a whole, I've been really enjoying Wano, and I like the aesthetic of the Edo style of Japan. I also really like the fact that Kaido is this giant blue dragon, and I'm hoping that Momonosuke, I don't know, powers up or something, because I would like for him to be a part of it. Seeing two dragons clash at least once is on my bucket list for this arc, but I understand that Momonosuke is probably not that strong, and he probably won't get an upgrade, so I'm just gonna have to hold that on for another time. But so far, Wano has been an improvement. I mean, the pacing hasn't really been bothersome for me at this time around, and I'm definitely in a lot better mood than I was for Whole Cake Island. And I'm still holding out to see what's the situation for Sanji, because I know he has that Gear 3 Power Rangers cup that he got from his brother. So I'm guessing he's probably going to utilize that at some point, begrudgingly so, and he's going to get a power-up, which I wonder how that's going to be for him morally. Because although I'm not a huge fan of Whole Cake Island, and I was considerably harsh, Sanji's arc is not completed. It's just kind of started, and I'm kind of waiting for the moment of closure, because it didn't really feel like I got closure with this arc yet. Because for Robin and Usopp and Nami, they had a lot of big arcs where they were like, you know, they were brought back and they were hanging out for a moment, but then they had that moment of showcasing, hey, I am a Straw Hat. And Sanji hasn't had the I am a Straw Hat moment, so I'm just kind of waiting for that. But yeah, no, I don't really have much else to say. I've been enjoying myself. But you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and bye.